Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us, and welcome to the Tower at UNN. As always, we're with you every Sunday with my co-host in the background and Mr. Chintu, and we'll come up to also give his greetings. I hope that you're all doing well, and thank you for always tuning in. But before we go any further, I would like to ask for, the national anthem. We'll listen to the national anthem, and right after the national anthem, we will get into the topics of the day. But welcome to the Tower at UNN, and we will not listen to our national anthem.
Oh, Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free, for liberty, together we'll always stand. Oh, Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and we've neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship.
And before we get my co-host here with us, Mr. Chintu, for today's show, we're going to be, of course, talking about, first of all, we're going to be talking about sub-imperialism and what that means in Africa's context. But more particular to us and our region, we're going to be talking about the Tutsi domination in the Great Lakes region. How far has this existed and what impacts it has today? What the historical impact can display or explain to our current situation. But without going any further into that, I would like to invite Mr. Chintu to give his greetings to our viewers today.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, listening to us and watching us from wherever you are. It's a great Sunday, and it's always a pleasure to be with you to exchange ideas and to expose those issues and ideas which have not been known to the general public, but at the same time, they are the foundation of our misery. So we are here to serve you, to expose the truth, which some of our listeners and observers find very difficult to stomach. However, we are not scared of any challenges. We are going to expose the truth so that you all know why Uganda and the entire Great Lakes region is bleeding, who is causing it, why they are doing it. So stay put, wait, and you're going to hear more. Thank you very much, and welcome to our program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chintu, for that introduction. And that is true. We come to really shine a light on what has been happening, how it's been created, and who is, and most importantly, who is spearheading the ongoing genocide that has been happening again and again over time in the Great Lakes region. But before we get into that, I will ask that, as it is tradition here to play a state anthem, we will go on and listen to the Lukbarakari anthem, which is a chiefdom in West Nile. And I'll ask the producer to please play that, and then we'll come back with our show.
Let us
and welcome back from that state anthem. And before we go any further, I would like for the producer to go ahead and play our first video for today. So I think before we go any further, so Mr. Chintu, today's topic, we're going to be looking at
ankole mulimu abantu bwe bati Tutsi, Abayima, Abakiga n'Abanankole. Kati Abakiga n'Abanankole babayita Abiiru. Ate bali baana b'abantu. Kati kye tusanga abaana b'abantu Abatuusi n'Abayima be balina obusobozi buli kintu kyonna. Bwe tugenda mu by'obufuzi be basalawo anaakulembera ekitundu kino. Ate bwe tugenda mu by'obufuzi fa Abayiru tetubeera na busobozi bw'okunoonya abakulembeze be twagala. Ate wabeerayo embundu ne ssente. Bwe bigaana n'okutta bakola ki? Batta. Bwe tugenda mu by'obulamu tuyina rifaaro embalala ya Western Region. Naye ebizimbe ebipya ebirimu bya private, they are owned privately, bya nanyini, bya bwananyini. Then tuyinamu n'amaduuka g'amalagala aga bwananyini nga siga private. Ate tuyinamu bine ebizimbe ebikadde bye bazimba mu rugimu y'oboti. Kati eby'abanaku Abiiru mwe bagenda ate n'osanga abalwadde nga beebaka wabweru bali ku oxygen bali ne ku drip. Ate nga ebikozesa mu ddwaliro bakuggyako ssente. Kati okulaba nga CT scan bakuggyako emitwalo 335. Buli kimu mu ddwaliro tukola ki? Tukisasula. Ate nga lya gavumenti. Ate mu masomero osanga essomero limu lina abaana nga 7 nga balina abasomesa nga 10 oba 7 mu private. Ate nga tebalina na classrooms aw'okutuula. Ate n'ekirala mu education wabeerayo scholarships eziva mu state naye zigenda mu families ezimu zino eza Tutsi n'Abayima. Ate economically mu byenfuna be balina ebyenfuna eby'amaanyi. Be balina zi factories. Ate tebasasula misoro, tebasasula bills z'amasanyalaze, tebasasula bills z'amazzi. Ate oluvannyuma ezo zonna bill baziteeka ku baana Abayiru abalina obubizinesi obutono. Ate n'ekirala mu Ankole region bano the Tutsi and Bayima be balina okusalawo mwana waani agenda ku mulimu guno, mwana waani anaagenda mu magye, anaagenda mu poliisi. N'obw'otuukayo ekyo kikugoberera ne bagamba ono omwana wa gundi tumuwe ekifo kino. Kati ffe tusigala nga Abayiru tukolera the Tutsi and the Bayima. Ate bwe tuvaayo eggwanga litulaba kimu. Naye bo the Tutsi and Bayima beekwese wansi w'Abayiru okulimba eggwanga mbu ffenna tuli kimu. Balina Abayiru be bakozesa ngeno nga bwe kiri the ministers the what nga bava mu Buganda region mu other regions ne waffe bwe kityo bwe kiri naffe bajjayo ne bakujjayo ne bakukozesa naye nga toyina ki? Toyina buyinzi. Kiki ekirala kye mwagala nteeke mu Luganda?
Kati Abayiru bajja kubeera all over the country, not just Banyankole and Bakiga. If these people have their plan, they want to make us also Abayiru. For me, I'm not a Mwiru. And I will never be anybody's Mwiru.
Before we go any further, I would like to, of course, also thank Mr. Joseph Carbleta for now we get to a level where we're starting as a nation to really dig into nepotism, because we used to talk about nepotism and how nepotism has been constructed to only benefit one tribe structure, one set of ethnic people, but we really were not as a nation discussing this on the national scale, on the through a source of media. So I'd like to, of course, as UNN would like to thank uh, Mr. Cableta for doing this and bringing this work, and now we have these resources that we can all see and then evaluate and analyze. So, Mr. Shintu, when I first saw this video, it made me think about, because number one is you have the people who are indigenous to the region, uh, and then which is some of the Hima groups are indigenous to the region, the Hima groups, and the Banyankole and the Bachiga. And then in that, you also have now the Tutsis who are understood to look alike to these ethnic groups, but are not indigenous to the region. When we talk about those that are indigenous to the region, when I first saw this video, it reminded me of when we first got documentation of Bahima Tutsi dynasty. And in regard to that, we wanted to remind our audiences that most of these things have already been documented. And I would like to ask the producer to please go ahead and display those slides where it is listed in terms of what the agreement was between the Tutsis and the Himas when they came into the region in regards to governing not only that region that they chose to settle in or masquerade as a part of, but the entire nation as Uganda. And then from there, we can then go into, you can help shed some light on some historical background of relationship between the two groups, but not only the historical background between the two groups as independent partners, but also the historical background with the role of the colonizer in getting these groups into positions of power. So as we can see, this was the Tutsi dynasty in Uganda modus operandi, where it was deny indigenous Ugandans quality education, deny indigenous Ugandans quality healthcare, deny indigenous Ugandans food security, deny indigenous Ugandans employment in senior civil service, military, police, and intelligence, make indigenous Ugandans suffer loss of land and property, indigenous Ugandans be killed, jailed, and exiled, indigenous Ugandans be impoverished. And these are all things that the lady in the video has highlighted. So, Mr. Chintu, I guess my question to you and what you can help shed more light on is, could you please break down for us at least the historical conditioning that then puts the Tutsi group in a light of them viewing themselves as leaders of a certain region and territory, even when they do not have right to that region or territory, even in cases where they're not indigenous, but they take on this uh, dominative attitudes towards other regions.
Thank you very much for this heartbreaking introduction of our tragedy in the region. Um, It is very, very unfortunate that we have even to discuss these kind of issues. In the first place, the Tutsis are not Ugandans. If we can be correct, they are invaders of Uganda. And they are trying to camouflage themselves within the Hima people who are actually indigenous Ugandans. Now, I am not very good at statistics, but I was told by a Munyankole by the name of Mariam. She used to be here in Washington, D.C. She told me that the real Ankole Himas are no more than 3% of the population of Ankole. Now, this could be a figure which she designed not based on scientific or accurate calculation, but let's give it an inflation and make them 5%. Still, it's a small population. And they lived very well in harmony with the so-called Bairu in Ankole. There has been no problem between those people, and there was no problem between those people of Hima or Banyankole, for that matter, with Baganda, Banyolo, Batoro, Bateso, Langis, Achoris, no problem. Until the influx of Tutsis from Rwanda, especially after they were expelled from Rwanda because of their evil practices. Now, what this lady is telling us is exactly what the DNA of the Tutsis is. Wherever they land, they want to be the only human beings that matter. Anybody else has to be denied of this, denied of that, denied of that. Okay? They have no concept of peaceful coexistence with anybody else. And this has been their practice for over 400 years. It's not a new thing. It's not Museveni, as some people purport to say, that it's only Museveni and Kagame who are rotten, the rest can be clean. That is totally untrue. And we have already found out that telling lies is part of their DNA. They groom their children from childhood to be liars. The only time they can say the truth is only when it is by accident. They could even lie to you that right now it is snowing outside when the temperature is about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, they're just professional, natural liars. And this has been verified in everything they say, and they do. Now, this lady has outlined their belief in health services, education, economic control, employment, security, you name it. They just want to be the only ones. When they entered Ankole as refugees, and they were given that refugee status way back in 1960, many of them started blending in as if they were Banyankole. And they used that title that we are Himas, so they could blend in. Now, when Museveni took over, they grabbed the indigenous Banyankole, used them, as this lady has explained, sent them out of Ankole, using them to do some work to be the driving force within the new administration, which in many cases painted a very dirty name on whoever comes from Ankole. People in Busoga, in Buganda, in Acholi, they looked at them as those Banyankole. But the trick was they removed them from Ankole. They give them these temporary positions whereby they really don't have the power. They move them in eastern region, in Buganda, in the northern region, even outside the country in so-called government positions. Now, if you go back where they pushed them from, they were bringing their own kith and kin from Rwanda to take over the villages. By the time you have finished serving as ambassador to India, you come back home, your ambassadorship has now been, has ceased. You come back home and you find that the whole village where you came from is populated by strangers you've never known. And this is what is happening. Now, a new generation of residents of this region are purporting to be Banyankole. I am from Ishingiro, I'm from Ibanda, I am from there. And you look at them and say, are you really a native of Ibanda or Ishingiro? Do you have grave of your father and your grandfather and your great grandfather in Ishingiro? The answer is obviously no. They are new imposters. And the Banyankore, the indigenous Banyankore, had been weakened so much that they could not even defend themselves and say, gentlemen, please, I am a Munyankore and he or she is not. They could not do it. I know of one guy who worked here in the World Bank. And I remember when I first met him, I said, oh, nice to see you. You are a newcomer to our town. He said, yes. And by the way, he looked like a real Munyarwanda. And I said, are you from Rwanda? No. I'm a Mchiga. I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were from Rwanda. And his name was, what is his name? I remember it. Emmanuel. I remember the other name, the Kinyarwanda name. Now, when Museveni took over, he made him director of Internal Revenue Service in Uganda. He stole off the Ndunguse, that was his name. Those of you who were in Washington, D.C. will prove me right. Ndunguse, that was his name. Emmanuel Ndunguse. And he lived in Silver Spring, Maryland. Now, when Museveni took over, Ndunguse became director of revenue in Uganda. He stole virtually all revenue and put it in a big bag and walked off to Kigali. He's now dead and his wife is still there. She's running some very big business he set up there. Now, this is a guy who purported to be a Mukiga when he was in Washington working at the World Bank. And nobody knew that he was a Munyarwanda, although his looks were very, very revealing. Now, this is what they have been doing, camouflaging as something which they are not. It is a shame that these are the only people on this planet Earth who are not proud of who they are. And those of you who have seen the picture of Museveni meeting Uganda students in Algeria who were sent their own government scholarships to study petroleum engineering, all of them, 100%, are Tutsi. Not Anacholi, not Munyoro, not Muganda, all of them, 100%. This is what they have been doing with the government scholarships. And you hear people telling you about government scholarships. And they are all dished out from State House. Among the recipients of that Museveni's financial backing during the training is the current Cardinal and Archbishop of Kigali, who grew up in Luwero as a Mulalo, and he was supported by Museveni when he was going through the seminary training. When after the seminary training and becoming a priest, he joined RPF and moved with them to Kigali. He was made a bishop, now he's a cardinal. That's the man our fellow Catholics in Boston are inviting to lead the memorial celebration of the Uganda martyrs. What a blasphemy.
Do they know RPF was on a trail of genocide?
As a matter of fact, I got a comment from a Rwandese priest who said that man is not even a Christian, but a devil. And I said, but you are also a priest, a Catholic priest. He said, yes, but I'm saying it in all honesty. Why did they bring that Mutusi killer to even to be the chief celebrant of Uganda Matters celebration? That's a blasphemy to our Catholic faith. In any case, these guys are liars. These guys are selfish. And you people of Uganda have to wake up. Look at what they have done in Congo. I remember when they led the rebellion against Mobutu, and they put themselves in power using the old Kabila, Laurent Kabila. The people who were controlling at that time were people like James Kabarebe and a couple of others. I can't remember all the names of my fingertips. But when they got to Kinshasa, they gave themselves salaries in dollars. And the other government employees who were indigenous Congolese were paid in Congo francs. Now, if they give you 1,000 Congolese francs and he gives himself 1,000 US dollars, who is making more money? The Congolese franc was like Uganda shilling, very, very cheap. So they were making a lot of money until the Congolese woke up and said, no, something is unfair. They had gone a step further. Everything they were giving themselves, they were looking for who is a Tutsi or who has a Tutsi blood. That is the one who is going to be employed. They tried to promote their own Tutsi people into the Congolese army until the Congolese woke up and said, hell no. And they had to fight them back. Now, as I said, telling lies is part of their DNA. Employment, they only want themselves. You are seeing this in Uganda today. How many of our students from Makerere who can't get a job? And everywhere you look, it's only Kaibandas, Kanyarengwe, Kaihura, you name it. Every position is full of them. No indigenous Ugandans. This I don't have to lecture to you. No Ugandan needs to be lectured about how evil the Tutsis are. You already know it and you are experiencing it on a daily basis. This is not new. Education, the same thing. And you know, what really upsets many of us is these guys, when they are talking, they talk in terms of killing who, where, destroying what. They do not talk in terms of building or improving whatever. Never. You never hear that in their vocabulary. Every time it is destruction. And that destruction has spread all over. Not only the infrastructure. Look at how many of our schools have been set on fire.
So many.
How many Ugandan schools have been set on fire? They had that pumpkin as Minister of Education. Look at our schools in Uganda. Not too long ago, I saw on social media a school where the teacher even said, we don't even have chalk to write on the blackboard. And he said he goes to the fireplace where he cooks his ugali and brings those charcoals to use them to write on the board. And the kids are sitting on bricks or pieces of wood in an open area under a tree. And you have that pumpkin as Minister of Education. What a shame. Yet they themselves are sending all their children outside to good schools in the United States, in Britain, and in India, Malaysia, you name it. Okay? When they fall sick, and they are even proud of telling you, we're airlifting this person to Nairobi or to Germany or South Africa. But the local indigenous people cannot be airlifted to Nairobi. By the way, why airlift anybody to Nairobi? The Nairobi hospitals were built by the government of Kenya which is responsible and responsive to the needs of their own people. Why in the hell you don't do that in Uganda? Because for them, they never think in terms of building. They just think in terms of destroying.
Mm.
In fact, this
And,
destructive culture has permeated them right even into the bedrooms, because whoever man is married to them has been totally destroyed brain-wise. They don't think as Ugandans any longer.
mm,
So you can imagine if someone came up and said, these people are a cancer to our society, I don't think he would be very far from the truth.
mm. But I think that now for us, because growing up, yes, there was that general sentiment that all the jobs are taken the Banyankole, the Banyankole, the Banyankole. It's only now that it's actually coming out that it's been Tutsi domination in Ankole in camouflage as the Banyankole. But in terms of, I think now we're starting to understand that it wasn't even the Banyankole. The Banyankole have also been captured, and of course, without all of you, our elders, we would not have been able to grasp like the depth of what is happening. I feel like we're back where Rwanda was as a nation before 1959, before the Hutus led a rebellion against the Tutsis at the time, who were being supported and funded by the colonizer. Which then brings me to look a bit into the enablers of the Tutsi dynasty. But before we look into the enablers of the Tutsi dynasty, I would like to first look at our local enablers. Our people, as ourselves today, I think is going to be our focus, looking at how our fellow Ugandan citizens have enabled and led to the lengthening of this dominance and even its strengthening. But before that, I would like the producer to please play us today's second video.
You always clear. Among all people, I'm going down for president. Yeah, you know, that's all right. I'm not going to do anything. You always clear. Among all people, I'm going down for president. Yeah, you know, that's all right. I'm not going to do anything.
So before we get into that video clip, I want the producer to please bring up the next slide. So that there was Chris Ovore dancing and saying we're in things. To the next slide, please. So of course, when we have a recap, so you have the ones at the top, and then you have our, I feel like, yeah, what do you say? In Buganda, they say, ngakayinja komungato, like a stone in the shoe is our parliament to us now. Because they are mindlessly, selfishly, greedily, for a few cents, giving into or prolonging this dominance. So there we have Chris Ovore dancing, and it was covering of this story. So recently there was discussion on the cars of the deputy speaker and the speaker getting new cars. So this car right here is a Mercedes S 500 AMG line, and this is what they want to order for the Deputy Speaker and the Speaker of Parliament. So it has a starting price of 110 110,850 USD. So the one that was made in 2021, which is the S class, has, because you know how our people are extravagant mindlessly and do not see the suffering of our people. I would not be surprised if when they order these cars, they are gonna order for these other additional things, such as it has, you can get stickers for the car for about $15,605, and then for the so-called light, and then you, if you plan on it, you can also get something else, an additional feature to the car for 4,300 USD, which is they will add for you a racier body kit, and they'll give you special floor mats. I would not be surprised if they order it with special floor mats and distinct wheels for the Mercedes flagship sedan. So in total, when we add the prices of these cars, two cars of them that are being ordered for the speaker and the deputy speaker, because they are getting rid of the old cars, they're actually just discarding the old cars. It's not like these cars do not work and these cars cannot be used. They are throwing them out. And keep in mind, we already are in a state of economic crisis, not only locally but internationally. They are throwing these cars out. They are buying two new cars that are going to range at least to about $140,000 to $150,000 for each car, which then brings us to, and they have to get them shipped to Uganda, pay off all the taxes. This is all national money, and it's going to be for about 1.8 billion. And then you have someone dancing and saying, we are in things and celebrating this like this is a national victory. Yet all they're doing is helping with the looting of the nation for comfortability that I do not understand that they need in Uganda. Where are you going to drive this car in Uganda? On what streets, on what roads have you built to be able to even manage this vehicle? What is happening with our parliamentarians and what parliament has become? It's just, not only is it a source of income, but it's a place where instead of discussing national issues, we're discussing whether we should buy such expensive cars and commodities for the newly elected speaker and the deputy speaker as well. So, and then someone's dancing and saying, we are in things. I wanted us to juxtaposition these two things and look at the current state of not only irresponsibility, but stupidity and greed that the people who are portraying themselves as leaders are. And so that then, Mr. Chintu, you can help us highlight and drive the point home for people to understand that the people that are in control are not the people that we even see playing the part of being in control.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's brain boggling to look at the prices of these cars being wasted, all that kind of money being wasted. But it doesn't surprise me. In any case, most of our countries, even the country that you would think is a poor country, our countries have a lot of money. Now, the money that is in Uganda is being enjoyed by these people minus any other obligations that you would think they are supposed to or they should be spending money on, such as the infrastructure in the country, the essential services like education, health. There is no such a thing. So they are not spending money on those things. All the money is sitting there for them. Those few, it could be 100 of them, even if it is 1,000 of them. For God's sake, all the wealth of the country being enjoyed by a handful of people as opposed to being enjoyed by the 45 million Ugandans. That's money. That's a lot of money. So throwing away $140,000, $150,000 to buy a car is nothing. It's just like me now buying a bottle of Coca-Cola. Even if I have $50 in my pocket, a bottle of Coca-Cola is not going to hurt me. But if I have $100 and I have to spend it on other obligations which I'm supposed to meet, I would have to probably bite my nails to figure out, should I spend this $1.50 to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola? Do I have to spend that money now, or I can wait tomorrow? But this is the way they think. Now, that idiot who was out there dancing like a baboon, you can understand. He thinks it is wonderful. The Batusi, you mentioned the word enablers. They find these idiots in our midst, pay them a lot of money, flood them with the gifts and the privileges, not knowing that they are being used. And then after a while, they are going to dump them, and in most cases, kill them, because they have served their purpose. That's what they are going to do to them. These enablers, those native idiots, like that one you saw dancing like a baboon, there are many of them. We have many of them in Uganda. So you have to admit we are going to have those kind of baboons in our midst, and they are going to be used. They were used by the British colonialists. They are now being used by the Tutsi invaders, and God knows they are also going to be used by the Chinese if the Chinese ever take over the country. So there will always be baboons. No, I mean, that's the way of life. However, it is up to us as Ugandans to watch out and not give them an opportunity to influence the state of affairs. Now, another area of enablers are people who have been used by sex. There are many of our people who have been lured into sexual extravaganzas with the Tutsi women, and you're going to find that none of those people who is married to them can stand up and defend Uganda patriotism. None. I will bet you $10 on that. None will defend patriotism, because their brains have been removed out of their heads, and they are now slaves, not knowing that they are slaves of these people through sex. And we know that historically, the Tutsis have used that very, very effectively for more than 400 years. So what else is new? Now, another area of enablers are the people serving the British interests. And as you know, the British foreign policy, actually, I would say the British domestic and foreign policy is anchored on the concept of Anglicanism. Because the
we're gonna go
Anglican
into
is a political institution. I'm sorry, my friends who are Anglicans, they may feel offended, but that's the truth, because we are here to tell the truth. And we have had this being played over and over in Uganda politics, projecting this as the determining factor of who should be what. And that has contributed greatly to the demise of Uganda.
But I will ask the producer to please go on the next slide, and we can look at some details of the Supremacy Act in regard to how Anglicanism has been used as the foundations, of course, for British domestic and foreign policy, so that our viewers have an understanding of what we're talking about. So as we can all see, is that this act was passed by the Parliament. It's called the Act of Supremacy. This was in 1534, and the Act of Restraint of Annatettes of 1532 gave the king power to appoint bishops. It's this was hard. Dispensations Act of 1532 stopped all payments to Rome. The Act of the Submission of the Clergy of 1532 put the monarchy in control of convocation. The Act of Restraint of Appeal of 1533 prevented anyone from appealing to the Pope in religious matters, and the Act of Succession of 1534 made Anne Boleyn's marriage to Henry valid and treasonable act to criticize the marriage. So here we had the marriage of the state and the church, and then the dominance of the church as the state, and the blurring of all those political lines where the supreme leader became the religious leader, and that was adopted that someone religiously affiliated with the Anglican Church will be the only recognized political leaders within the politics of the nation. So from there, Mr. Chintu, we can go into how this applies to us and how this applies to Buganda. If you could please, for our viewers, since they've gotten the background, shed some light on how this then applies to us when Christianity comes with the missionaries, and we get Catholicism, and we get also the Anglican Church, and then how this has affected our politics and has been also one of those hindrances from us being able to liberate ourselves and progress in terms of state building.
Yes, that part of British history is very important and at the same time very troubling when you are talking about African political development. Spirituality should not be based on political positions or political power. These two areas are totally different. But once you merge them together and you make a political power dependent upon spiritual power to be dependent upon political power, then you have a problem. It's very unfortunate that this act of supremacy was transplanted in Buganda first and then was spread throughout Uganda. And the damage it has created is very vivid. You can see it right now. What we need to do is we should leave the problems of the British to the British. We were not out there when Henry VIII was trying to marry that Anna Boleyn, whose lineage is even questionable, has a lot of question mark, who is the actual father of that girl. So that is their British. That's nothing to do with us as Ugandans. If we are going to be religious, whether we are Christians, Muslims, Catholics, Seventh-day Adventists, Greek Orthodox, yes, let's take our spirituality very much a part of our life in our spiritual way. And we should separate them from the politics as the British wanted it to look like, because we have no historical lineage to the British. We have no, we are not. We are really Africans. And I really, in my study of political and religious development, I have great admiration for the Muslims, because when the Islam came to this country, the Arabs wanted all the converted Muslims to adopt Arabic names. And I don't remember whether it was Kakunguru or someone else who said, no, if I am Kakunguru, I belong to the clan of whatever, I think it was of Nsenene, I don't remember. Anyway, if my name is
Chigundu,
I am of Nchima clan. I can be a Muslim, so you can call me Sulaiman or Mohammed or Abdallah, but my name of Chigundu identifies me first as a Muganda, two as of Nchima clan, the monkey clan. So you cannot take that away. If you call me Abdallah bin Mohammed. How can I be identified as a man of a Chima clan, which they did to our brothers in Sudan, which they did to our brothers in Zanzibar? They lost their indigenous names. And these men stood up and said, no, we are going to be good Muslims, but we are going to retain our indigenous names. And the Arabs couldn't push far. They just let it slide. And then they said, okay, to identify you as a Muslim, I think it was that Kakunguru who said, we shall wear entarabusi to identify us, even if you see me in the marketplace, that, oh, that is a brother Muslim. Yes, that we can wear. Like the Catholics are wearing their rosaries. But but we are not going to discard our identity as indigenous Ugandans. That's great. Now, when we talk about the way the act of supremacy influenced the politics in Uganda, it reminds me of the old man called Michael Kintu, who was a Katikkiro of Buganda in 1950, in the late 50s. Katikkiro Michael Kintu questioned Kabaka Mutesa and said, now you are telling us to support this man Obote. And the Baganda have very interesting value standards. This man Obote doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a chibanja, and we don't even know where it's coming from. How can you promote him to become a chief? Because a Muganda will never make you a chief, even if you're a fellow Muganda. You must have a family, a wife, a chibanja, and we have to know who you are, where you come from. And the Mutesa's answer to Michael Chintu was, is our fellow Protestant. And that was the reason. Now, people started complaining that the Kabaka should not participate or interfere in the politics. He should be above politics. I think that was in the 1955 agreement, that the Kabaka should be above politics. But Mutesa didn't. He became an active participant in politics. And we have seen it even now with the President Kabaka. Because when he was picked up from London to come and participate in the Uganda politics, we had fighting groups that were fighting against Obote's regime. We had the Kaira force, what was it called? UFM. UFM was fighting. It was led by Kaira. There was another force led by George Nkwanga, also fighting against Obote. Then there was Museveni's group, also fighting against Obote. Now, this so-called Sabataka at the time became a partisan participant and joined Museveni's group. Now, if he was a Sabataka of Baganda, he should have joined the fighting groups of those who were Baganda. He could have at least hidden his identity and said, no, I am not trying to be partisan, but because these are my fellow Baganda. But he didn't. Now we know why he didn't join them. Because that group which was driving him around was all a remnant or part and parcel of the act of supremacy. In fact, this was confirmed many years later by Archbishop Onkoyoyo, who said that we are going to support Yoweri Museveni because he is ours, in quote, as opposed to supporting Paul Semogerere, who is not ours.
Mr. Chintu, what I find very hard to understand is how is the current Kabaka coming, not having lived in Uganda, coming from exile and still holding. Anyway, he grew up in the UK, so I can understand how he found how this was not foreign to him, but holding such strong belief in an act of supremacy without first identifying as Buganda itself and the people of Buganda, but
I don't think
leading
he
with
did. I don't think he did. I think the enablers, the handlers are the ones who were driving him in that direction.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Locally known as the Mengo clique, but which is also known academically as the Kakamega group, which we have talked about before. These are the people who were driving the whole thing in that direction.
So before we go any further, I would like the producer to, we'll go in a short break, and then we're going to come back and talk deeper into how Buganda itself as a region and its people have also enabled this domination. And we're going to look at also instances in history that we have played more of a hand, especially the Mengo group, the Kakamega group, have played a role in prolonging this beyond even just using things such as the act of supremacy and leaning on it and using these abstract and out of reach ways as a point of making decisions that affect a whole nation. So we'll take a short break and then we'll come back right after the break with a video.
The importance of a federal system of governance in Uganda. 1. Federalism restores peace and regional stability. 2. Federalism promotes political participation. 3. Federalism encourages economic development across the country. 4. Federalism provides multiple levels of government action. 5. Federalism accommodates a diversity of opinions. 6. Federalism protects against tyranny of the majority. 7. Federalism promotes unity without imposing uniformity. Register today and join the UFCC Assembly by visiting www.ufcc.uk.
Dr. Andrew Takome Kaira was born on 30th January 1945 in a small town known as Nkokonjeru in the Buganda region. He is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country sent him to an early grave. He was a lawyer and professor and had many accomplishments since 1971, with many of his accolades attained from his education and political experiences, both nationally and internationally. Significant is his doctoral dissertation titled Condoism in Uganda, which has awarded him an internationally recognized terminology now used in criminology. He joined several political organizations, including Uganda Freedom Movement, UFM, which he was the leader, the Uganda National Liberation Front, UNLF, later joining the National Resistance Army, NRA, which had once been his organization's rival. Dr. Kaira is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country led to his premature death. He was just 46 years old when he was assassinated on 6th March 1987 during a dinner with his close friends and 3 female acquaintances. His killers have never been brought to justice.
Welcome back from that short break. And Mr. Chintu, now we're taking a turn into another segment. We're going to be looking at how, because when we started the show, we started off how Ankole was a refuge place and a refuge to the Tutsis once they left the uprising of the Hutus, once the Belgians were kicked out of Rwanda. Now we're also going to look at a different case scenario where Buganda, which we rarely think is the case, also played a huge role in terms of being a refuge. But before we go into that, I wanted to take us back in time, because it's always good to at least get a feeling of the situation of what was in terms of Buganda's politics, because we forget that Buganda even wanted to be its own state. It is its own state. When Kabaka Mutesa went into exile, it wasn't to give Uganda independence, but to give Buganda independence. So we're going to watch a video. It's a bit lengthy, but to just give a feel and a background for our audience of what that is. That's part of the reasons why we advocate for federacy, because not only Buganda, but even all these indigenous, be it chiefdoms or nations, had to get their independence in their formation, instead of giving a collective Uganda that was a construction of the British themselves. So we'll go into that video and we'll come back and cover this segment, as this will be the main segment of our show today.
Mutesa balaba kaliwo ne batunzabuza n'akabajaze balaba kaliwo ne batunzabuza n'ayitaninze balaba kaliwo omulongo omuwavu taliyo nkabira mukwano taliyo mwana wa Ireni taliyo nkabira Mutesa taliyo omulongo omuwavu Oludi balaba kaliwo, Mutesa balaba kaliwo ne batunzabuza n'akalabyanza balina ebitiibwa ng'olwo batembeza luzira n'akalabyanza balina obuyinza maama bayitira manju n'ayitanifa balina eddoboozi ng'olwo tubonera baba okwongera kabakotira kawemudde Mama nadawa mukwano n'akalabyanza balina amayumba ng'olwo tulira mu nsalo n'ayitanifa balina emikwano ng'olwo tujangana baba n'akalabyanza balina obuyinza maama tuyingira misana n'akalabyanza balina ettabaza maama tulira mu nzikiza n'akalabyanza balina omukwano oluli balaba taliwo Mutesa balaba taliwo ne batunzabuza taliyo omulongo omuwanvu taliyo nkabira Mutesa taliyo mwana wa Ireni taliyo omulongo omuto maama nadawa mukwano n'akalabyanza talina buyinza maama mukwano gw'abangi n'akalabyanze waliwo obukyawe nti nno alisa n'alamula n'akalabyanze waliwo obulimba nti nno alisa n'ayogera wagenda na bigere mukwana tekwe ndinotera mikono watuleka mazika mukwana tekwe ndinotera mazika wandimaze kutuuka n'etulo gy'obuyike maama naddawa mukwano wandimaze kutuuka n'etulo gy'obuyike maama watuleka baba daliyo mulongo muwangu daliyo nkabira mutenda daliyo mwana wa Ireri daliyo mulongo muto maama naddawa mukwano n'akola njanza talina buyinza nti namugamba natunula yandifudde n'afiira buyinza maama ndifunsi yabobwe yandifudde n'afiira buyinza maama ndifunsi yabobwe naye okufiira ku ggwanga awatali mubezisa bakagomulamba bamusanga nti awatali kulwaza maama naddawa mukwano bwe ndowooza okufa kwenenenyiwa emikwano maama daliyo mulongo muwangu daliyo nkabira mutesa daliyo mwana wa Ireri daliyo nti twamusimba ne Tutsi bululi balaba kaliwo mugeza balaba kaliwo ne banobunzabuza n'akola njanza talina buyinza nti namugamba natunula n'akola njanza talina buyinza nti namugamba nayogera n'akola nja yandifunye ebirungi maama mikwano gy'abangi n'akola nja yandirabye emikwano maama ndifunsi yabobwe n'akola nja yandifunye ebirungi bambi okuziira bwe byali n'ayiganiza ndinabye emikwano maama daliyo mulongo muwangu daliyo nkabira mutesa daliyo mwana wa Ireri daliyo nti twamusimba ne Tutsi
Well, it was a fight, and we had to fight our way out. But you please forgive me if I don't make too long a statement tonight, because of the overwhelming sort of circumstances of my welcome and pleasure of being here, and that I've been to sort of long harassing experience. But I have recently had a trying experience. I hope that you will forgive me if I make this short statement to you. I'm most grateful indeed that the people of England have made this share of warmth, of extension of friendship towards me on my arrival. So, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, please understand that I'm terribly harassed for a bit, because I've got certain matters on my mind, particularly those of my closer relations, my wife and sister, got a brother also sort of behind, who were held, but they make it very difficult for me not to be, calm. But I'm forwarding immediately to seeing those few members of my family who are here in this country, being looked after by friends who've stood by me all the way through, and yourselves here. And I think, God willing, this won't take very long. I hope to not be on your minds, or sort of be a problem to Britain for over long. that it will soon be over. Thank you so much.
Dr. Bertie said that only 40 people had been killed in the disturbances in Kampala and in the rest of Buganda. But nobody that I've talked to in Kampala believes this figure. In fact, the general impression is that the number of dead runs into several hundred, if not into several thousand. One reliable source gave me the figure of 1,700 dead. I talked to one African who lives just over the hill there, who said that he'd seen 3 lorry loads of bodies being driven away from his own village, and another African who reported seeing bodies being dumped in a mass grave near the prison at Port Bell on the shore of Lake Victoria.
And that was a video just covering from during colonization all the way to independence, and then all the way to the exile of Kabaka Mutesa I. And why we figured that we'd bring this video, because the more we revise and relook at and acquaint ourselves with Uganda's history, I believe that that's the more we can understand the situation Uganda is in. So before we get into in relation to that video, I'd like for the producer to please portray the next slide. And Mr. Chintu, you know, we did come into contact with some, not come into contact, but we did receive some letters from that were written to the UN, and these were letters that were written in Buganda. And if the producer could please go to the next slide. These were letters that were written to the UN from Buganda, and I'm gonna go ahead and read this first letter. And these were written after 1959, when of course there was the Hutu rebellion or uprising, when they overturned the governing body that was Tutsi dominated and supported by the Belgian regime. And during the independence endeavors, the Tutsis became refugees in the region. And this was a letter that they wrote. This letter was written on the 1st of February 1961. It was written to the United Nations. And the letter reads as, please inform Secretary. It's addressed to Omar Luffy, Secretary Council, United Nations, New York. And it reads, please inform Secretary we strongly object to the new formed Republican government in Rwanda. Stop. We only recognize King Kigeri V, the only rightful monarch and head of Rwanda. We petition the nations to protect Rwanda now. Sorry, there's going to be some grammatical errors because this is a translation from French to English. Now, the mistakes the Belgians made in Congo are repeated in Rwanda before it becomes worse and irreparable. Stop civil war impeding. And this was written by Apollo Kibindi, chairman, Abanyarwanda, Abarundi, Abade, and this was Abarundi, Abadehemuka in Singo, Buganda, is where this letter was addressed from and sent to the UN Council. And this was addressing, of course, the exile of the Tutsis at that point in time. And when they sought refuge in Uganda, they already had an address, a place that they were, and an organization to lean on that was based on supporting, exalting, and uplifting the lineage of the aristocracy of the Tutsi. So on that, along those points, Mr. Chintu, could you please help us shed more light on not only the exaltation of this aristocracy, but how even till this day the dominance of the group is based on upholding those aristocratic positions of power that they held, and it's modeled in that kind of way, and how there is an oath and an aligning of the group to the aristocracy to continue the domination across the region, not only in Uganda but also in Congo.
Yes, you can see from that document, these people do not believe in democracy. They really don't. They were opposed to a republic formed on democratic principles of one man, one vote, majority rule, and minority rights. For them, that is unacceptable. All they want, when they hide behind the monarchy of King Chijeri, then there is no democratic governance in that country. It is a kingdom whereby everything rotates around them and them only. As we know already, we talked about this during our first presentation when we were trying to give throw light on who the Batusi are. These people, they are so self-centered and selfish that it is beyond imagination. The Hutus in Rwanda, who are the majority, were nobody. They were not allowed to get the education they deserve. They were not given the services they deserve. They were not even allowed to participate in political affairs, as that woman explained about what is going on today in Ankole. This has been the practice by these people for more than 400 years. And anybody who tries to defend this thing, this behavior, this political system which these Tutsis have tried to perpetuate, I would say you're out of your mind. And anyone who, you've heard these people standing up and say, oh, no, it is only Museveni who is bad. Hell no, Museveni is not the only one who is bad. The whole of you. Because this system was not discovered yesterday by Museveni. Even if Museveni is 90 years old today, you have been doing this for more than 400 years. Was there Museveni at that time doing these things? No. Okay, we talked about the evil things they did to the Hutus. I don't want to go through that. Those who remember the tapes, you can even find them on your YouTube. We explained these things. It is what they have done that forced the Hutu population to say enough is enough. In the same way as Ugandans are now saying enough is enough, even though there are some people who are trying to, cover up all this. But enough, people reach a point of saying enough is enough because we have suffered long enough. We have died much enough. We have seen our country being destroyed long enough. Now we are ready to roll up our sleeves. And people do. The Hutus of Rwanda, they reached that point in 1959, and they did what they did. They kicked these people out of the country. They came to Uganda. We gave them refugee. I personally, I was teaching at Buganda Primary School near Kakuto. Me and the wife of the Gombolola chief, we spearheaded taking care of these people who came on foot from Rwanda to Kakuto. We gave them sanctuary. We fed them. I rode my bicycle. I used to have a bicycle called the Raja. It was one step below Rare. And I drove my bicycle all over those villages, Navigasa, you name it, looking for food to feed these poor people. Now I look back, these are the people I fed. Honestly, it's very disturbing in my brains. I fed them. But look what they have done to us. They were given official sanctuary in Namutamba and Kiboga and a couple of other places in Buganda. They were settled there. And then from there, they wrote this letter because when they say single, they were actually writing from Nakamba. During those days, as I told you before, they organized the Banyarwanda Youth Association. And they are putting in the word Burundi, but there was no refugees from Burundi. These were all from Rwanda. I don't even understand why they are putting in the name Burundi, because there was no distance. I'm alive today and I was alive then. So I know this thing from first-hand information. I didn't read them from books. There was no problem in Burundi at that time. Well, there was a problem with the Batusi and the Bahutu in Burundi, but there was no influx of refugees being kicked out of Burundi. This was all about Rwanda. Now, they tried to organize the Banyarwanda Youth Association, which Obote said, no, you can't do it because you are now under the UN protection as refugees, and you cannot use our territory to attack a neighboring country because we are all signatories to the OAU Charter, whereby no interference in the neighboring countries' affairs, as a very important article in that charter of the OAU. Now, when they failed to do that, you see, this man is telling you a civil war is pending. They have been preparing for a civil war ever since 1960. They only succeeded when they took over Uganda. Then they used Uganda as a stepping stone, and getting in cahoot with the American and the British economic scavengers, if I could call them that, which also propelled them even further and helped them succeed in their data mission. Now, the plan to have a civil war is not new. They only succeeded it in 1991, I believe, when they attacked Rwanda from Uganda, led by Rwigema, Iringira, and a couple of others, and Kano Bunyenyezi. So you can see how people are, and this also can be understood when if you have read the tweet by Muhoz. He said, we are a people who never forget and never forgive. And at least this time around, Muhoz said the truth. I think he said it by accident. I don't think he really meant to tell us the real truth. But we knew it. That's what they are. Okay? Now, Buganda gave them sanctuary, and they have misused it. But it is now up to Buganda to wake up so that you can understand whom you are dealing with. This is a very, very dangerous situation. What they have done in Congo, what they are doing in Rwanda, what they are doing in Uganda, now it is spreading throughout Uganda. And everyone is crying. You've seen the dead bodies in Karamoja. You've seen the dead bodies in Acholi land. You've seen them all over. This is what they know how to do best. They have no interest in building a nation. They just want to destroy.
Also, what was so, I wanted us to also speak to how they have been uplifted and helped by, of course, the economic scavengers, because this was 1961. This letter gets written even before Uganda gains its independence. So the preparing and the UN Charter, like us as an African nation, still having the arms of these economic scavengers still in the midst of us, like their institutions, their organizations, where now you have a not really a secret society, but to a large extent a secret society functioning in the midst of Buganda for the reasons to bring about civil war in order to dominate a region, and that's happening but within the guise of they ask the UN for this help. It's the UN and all these foreign organizations that will come to their help, that will provide the machinery that they need once they were successful with Uganda. Because when we look at when Museveni went to the bush, there was less of a chance that he was ever even going to pull off this war. And even he did not fight the war. From the information we've gotten, he had the war being like he had about Tito Kello falling from from the position of power and came back to Uganda, because with many rebel groups at that time engaging in guerrilla warfare, it was evident that all of that pressure was going to be put on Obote's government. Then Tito came in, then Tito was removed. So I guess the question that I'm trying to, or what I'm trying to bring to light is the time that this happens, and also can we talk about how also the Tutsis themselves were supported even whilst in Rwanda by the Belgians themselves. They were financed to continue their military domination of the region, financed to continue their brutality as long as the Belgians got the resources that they wanted out of that nation. And in most cases, we have been taught that this had to do with that the Belgians found them more European looking, but I found that it has to do also more with their military background in the region for over 400 years, because they were just a group that was dominating region to region, who they were known to be vicious and militant fighters.
Yes, now you are asking a very important question with respect to the historical evolution of the Rwanda Burundi colony under the Belgians. First of all, you got to remember Rwanda and Burundi, or they used to call it Rwanda Urundi, was a German colony. When so was Tanganyika.
Yeah.
When World War One was won by the Western capitalistic countries, Germany was deprived of its colonies. Tanganyika was handed over to the British. Rwanda, Urundi was handed over to the Belgians. When the Belgians took over Rwanda and Urundi, they found that there has been a group which has been dominant for more than 400 years. And they figured, and I've read this somewhere, I can't even put my fingers on where I read it. They figured that trying to correct that imbalance would be calling for too much trouble. First of all, we have just come out of World War One. Now, if we try to correct this imbalance, we do not have the resources, the political stamina to face the challenge these people are. Now, after all, they have not objected for our taking over the colony from the Germans. Let us leave them alone just for the sake of peace. So they let the Tutsis continue their crap as long as they do not interfere with the Belgians' position to control the colony. Now, when people accuse the Belgians for having accommodated this, yes, you have a very good point. But look at them from another point of view. They were handed this colony to supervise and administer whatever and exploit if you can. But they were not here to baptize their souls. So the Belgians grab whatever they can grab, leave the damn fools, whatever. After all, they are all Africans. If they are killing each other, I don't care. If they are oppressing the other people, I don't care, as long as they don't interfere with where I am and what I am trying to achieve in the colony. That's it. Now, it took some Catholic missionaries And I remember it was a missionary from Switzerland. Now look at this country. This is a missionary from Switzerland, which is a very neutral country in Europe. Nothing to do with the colonialism, nothing to do with all this other dirty stuff. He had the heart to say, no, this is unfair, but we have to find a way of rectifying the situation. And the only thing they did is what you people are doing on UNN, educating the people so that they can know. And they tried to educate the people in the issue of social justice. You see, you cannot have peace and progress or development without justice. You cannot. So they tried to teach the Hutus that, yes, you have to be able to stand up and defend yourselves based on the principles of social justice. And that's how they sent this young man, Gregory Kayibanda, to Switzerland to study journalism and to study sociology. He came back and worked in a newspaper in Kigali. I think they used to call it, I've forgotten the name. There is a Kinyarwanda name. He was the editor of that newsletter and constantly wrote about social justice, which woke up the population of the Hutus. When the Hutus had reached a point of saying enough is enough, they stood up when independence was pending because they were fearful. If the Belgians grant independence to this country under the leadership of the king, it is going to be very, very difficult. They timed it at that time when independence was in the offing. That's when they struck and they got rid of the king. It is for that reason you see this man saying, we do not accept the republic system of government the Belgians have. Now he's accusing the Belgians of having imposed a republic on the country. No, the Hutus wanted a republic, wanted democracy, wanted human rights, wanted social justice, and they demanded the republic. When the Belgians were back and they said, okay, you can have it. And they got it. Now, from that moment, the Tutsi minority hated anybody who supported democratic governance coming into this country. In fact, they just don't believe in it. They believe in family control, like you're saying now in Uganda. One family they haven't declared themselves a king, but they are really a kingship.
In their actions, they have
The wife who can't even peel bananas is now Minister of Education. The son-in-law who is just good at selling liver and the kidneys of our people is the big man. The step brother who looks like a sack of mutere, dried cassava, is now whatever he is. I mean, they're just controlling everything. That's how they believe. But democracy, hell no. He sits here and tells you, in that constituency, I want Oranya's son to be the next member of parliament. And so it is. No matter how you all dance around trying to compete, you cannot win because the king has already decided who is going to be the MP from that constituency. And that's it. That's the final word. So you do not find democracy in these people's brains. It's never there and it will never be there. When they took over Uganda, they took advantage of our stupidity. Because as I said, when we transplanted something that was nothing to do with our Uganda's history, the act of supremacy, which you highlighted earlier on, when they transplanted it, because in that act of supremacy, it also outlines nobody can be in a position of leadership unless he belongs to this church. Now, how? Well, that if the English want it, Let them have it. We are not English. But we in Uganda, we have Muslims, we have Catholics, we have pagans, we have, you name it, we have them. You can't say no. Uh, you are not going to be enjoying equal rights in determining the political trends in this country. You can't do that in Uganda. That's why we have a problem. And with that weakness, as the Bible says, a kingdom that is divided cannot stand. We were divided. The Tutsis found that division and moved through that wedge and positioned themselves into that structure. And they took over the country. Had we had sense to be intelligent enough, there is no way these people could have taken off. You know, and those of you, I'm sure many of you listening to us were alive. Some of you participated in this war. The victory, or rather, the real fighting that defeated Okero's regime in Uganda was won by UFM. NRA cannot claim to have actually broken the back of the Okero regime. It was UFM. But because of this group we have talked about, the Kakamega group, which found a way of manipulating the system in support or with the support of the British, they brought in this prince from London to come and throw his royal weight on this man called Yoweri Museveni because Oyo Yewafe concept. And with the British manipulation, that's why we got Museveni. And the Kayira was thrown out. So was Nkwanga, and they were both killed. Otherwise, they are going to raise hell or maybe become a thorn in the back for us. That's why they killed the Kayira, and they killed most of the top guys in the UFM and in the FEDEMU's group. It is our stupidity that made it possible for Museveni to come in, because his force was already pushed all the way down to Kasese. And the Kayiras had already taken over. They were somewhere around Muyenga and the Kororo. Those who were in that fighting can verify what I'm saying. Hadn't we been that stupid, we wouldn't be where we are today.
It is disheartening that it is actually active stupidity that has continuously placed us in this position, because we look at Museveni's group and where they are at now and how they've managed to dominate, and they're able to come together, be as one in a single bracket based off of their best interests. But here you have the Kamega group that has no relation to, as you have highlighted, to what's happening in England, but are basing all its values and virtues on still England's policies. And we consider ourselves to be independent by our minds, and they affect millions of people. So it is disheartening that this is the situation that we're in. So we're going to move on, Mr. Chintu, to the second letter, but I would like to highlight something very important that you've said throughout this program today. You're starting to highlight that with this group and their oath or their belief in their aristocratic leaders, they actually do not believe in democracy. That's why we find ourselves where Mohozi is actually being campaigned for as the next president. We've known it for a long period of time, but because he's Museveni's son, he's being campaigned to become the next president of Uganda. We have instances where it was just, as you mentioned, the whole family being like the king and the queen. We had 3 people sign an agreement that affected the whole of Uganda, just Museveni, Janet, and kutesa. So we're starting to see that. I always think I think back to that first video when I first when this letter first came into uh, our hands. Like, you think back to that video when Museveni is talking about this is not a minor change of guards, and all those videos and campaigns of bringing democracy. You just see also back into how the lies are the only way in order for them to keep grasping and holding on to this power. So I would like to for our viewers to start to understand that democracy or democratic action is not even in the question, and this is just genocide, mass murder, and destruction, as you have highlighted, is the only way that they will remain in power, and it's what waits for us at every turn. So we're in a situation of, if you do nothing, you still are going to be hunted down, killed, murdered, and thrown to the lions' dens. If you do something, you will be victorious, but it would be also a struggle with a group that has been given access to military weapons by the West as well. So we'll go into the second letter, and this one's a bit longer. I don't know, Mr. Chito, if you'd like to read that one as we go through it.
I don't think I can read it very clearly here.
No worries. I'll go ahead and read it. So this one is a second one, and this is a petition. It's from Mr. Apollo Chibindi, who is the president of the Abanyarwanda, Abarundi, Abadaremuka. And this was written, of course, as we said, from Singo, and this was the Namutaba branch. This is in Buganda, concerning Rwanda Urundi. It circulated in accordance with Rule 85, Paragraph 2 of the Rules of Procedure of Trusteeship of the Council. So the producer could please go to the next slide. Namutamba. Sorry, my pronunciation was off on that. This is in Namutamba. So the letter reads as follows. Sir, on behalf of the Abanyarwanda and Abarundi Abadahemuka living in this part of Buganda, we humbly petition the United Nations to intervene into the Rwanda-Urundi affairs and protect the country, for the Belgians have totally failed to keep peace and order in the country. In fact, they are direct and indirectly responsible chief engineers of the whole unfortunate and regrettable affairs. All natives in Rwanda Urundi, with exception of their stooges, have entirely lost trust and confidence in the Belgian administration. We only trust the United Nations, and our hope is in you, that you can restore peace and order in our country. We therefore ask you urgently for your immediate and utmost help and consideration over the situation in Rwanda Urundi before it becomes irreparable. The Belgians are now struggling mainly, it appears, to divide and create hatred among natives, and then quit when the whole country is completely disorderly state and chaos. We earnestly beg you, keep us out of the malicious intentions and save the souls of poor and innocent natives of our country. The following are a few of the unspeakable injustices they're doing in the country. The Belgians have imprisoned the Umwami king, Mwabutsa, in his residence at Usambura for no reason at all. Girls and boys, men and women who still confess that they still regard Umwami Kigeri V, their rightful monarch, have been put in prisons for that matter only, and are made to undergo severe hardships. Boys and girls in Rwanda who wrote on their arms Vive Kigeri V as a sign of their love and loyalty have been put under the hard torture of burning off the inscription with a very hot iron. The UNAR political prisoners in Rwanda, it has been declared, will be killed immediately the country becomes independent. And then the Belgians are now trying to make agreements with the Parmehutu party to guarantee their long stay and power in the country when it becomes independent. And for that reason, they are supplying them with firearms. In conclusion, we humbly beg you to return the first the first the first condition. A, the Umwami Kigeri V of Rwanda in his country, for the Belgians have ousted him in guise of natives of Rwanda. And then the second request, to set free the Umwami Mwabutsa of Urundi, who is now imprisoned for no reason at all. And the third request, to remove Belgians entirely from our dear country, for the longer they stay there, the more wars and bloodshed prevail in the country. We petition this, for we do not want the mistakes the Belgians made in Congo to be repeated in Rwanda Urundi. We are thankful for the decisions you made in your last meeting of Rwanda Urundi, and we appeal to you to implement it as soon as possible. At present, the Belgians in Rwanda are trying to bring to nothing all your aims and intentions for the country, with a view of turning all natives to their side. We petition you to keep your word and show the poor natives in Rwanda Urundi where the truth lies, because the Belgians are trying to hide it. And it goes on to say, yours faithfully. There was, I think this is SGJ, I don't know what that would be. And then Apollo Chibindi, for and on behalf of the Abanyarwanda and Abarundi, Abadehemuka and Single Buganda. And that is the end of the letter.
Wow. They are still insisting on restoring the king. As we see, all this happened at the, I would say, at the eve of Rwanda's independence. Now they are putting the blame on the Belgians instead of putting the blame on their own crimes against humanity. They are not even recognizing that they have enormous crimes against humanity, which propped up the majority population to rise up against them. Besides, what they have, it is interesting to hear them saying that the king has been under arrest in his own house. And I think the location he's talking about is like our mango place for the king. That's where he's not allowed to. Isn't that what they have been doing to Chaguranyi all the time? Isn't that what they have been doing to Besigye all the time? Another thing is talking about being people being imprisoned with hard labor. It reminds me, I told you how I helped to feed those poor refugees when they came in Kakuto. A few times I used to come with my basket full of bananas, beans, you name it, and I brought them to this place at the Gomborora there in Kakuto, those who know that area. We used the Chitawuruzi as a hostel for them to sleep. Then they asked me, "Oh, thank you for the food, but who is going to cook it for us?" They thought I should bring servants to cook for them. And I was so pissed off. Even the Kura chief was standing by me. I said, "You bloody fools, what is wrong with your women? Let them cook the damn food I've brought for you." They just want to sit there because they are prince and the princesses. I should have brought the servants to cook for them. I said, bloody you. You cook. We have given you everything. You cook for yourselves and eat the damn food. Shit. But they want to bring the servants to cook for them. So now, anyway, I know that because I went through it. That was 1960, by the way. Look at what they are doing to our people in Narufenya. They are not locking up our people at Narufenya or Kitalia in hard labor. No, they are slaughtering them. They are killing them. And these are the same people telling you that, oh, their people have been put in prison with hard labor. Well, because they are so damn lazy, they can't even clean their behinds. They want someone else to do it for them. No. When they came to our country, look at what they are doing. How many of our people have been tortured to death? Tortured to death by these people for no reason. For no reason. Simply because we are Ugandans. We are in our country and they want our land. You saw that story saturating not too long ago. They went somewhere there in Singo and they started cutting the banana plantations and even destroying the tombs of our ancestors who have been buried there. We bury people by our families. And I've seen those pictures, destroying because they want to take over that whole village for themselves. That's baloney. We cannot accept that. You see, the interesting thing about this whole exposition is they have no shame for the crimes they have committed. And they think
No
that is
remorse.
they have no remorse. I can't think of any other group of human beings who are totally void of remorse and shame for their crimes. It's very, very disturbing to all of us.
I guess it's the other group that they find companionship is of course the European colonizers, because they exhibit the same behavior. No remorse, no understanding of the crimes they've committed against humanity, and the genocide was all they seek is domination. But here we get to see on the screen what we have displayed on the screen. We can see that Abademuka is, of course, a group, and although these words are written in French, we can start to understand where these, how long this organization, because Mr. Chintu, when we first got these letters, is then we can start to understand why taking over of Uganda, why it is the way that it is now. Even before they had that whole Rachitura convention, there was already a need and an interest to expand. And Uganda's political, we've discussed this on various shows and many other times, was that what was happening in Uganda's political space gave a window. And once they found a willing sponsor in the British, they started to, once they found a willing sponsor in the British, they now had the financial means, and the Americans. So when they start to take over, and with this group now that we're looking at, which is Abadehemuka, sorry, I keep on mispronouncing this. If we can go through, because you've been talking about how they have no remorse, how they are not repentant, and we've been talking about how they're even, to some extent, oblivious to their actions of violence. It's as though they didn't, humans have not been killed in this tragedy. And what would be the meaning of the word Abadahemuka?
Unfortunately, my little knowledge of Kinyarwanda has not helped me to understand what that word means. But I am going to take this opportunity and check with my contacts there. I will give you an answer next time around. Abadehemuka. I will get the real answer for that question. Definitely, they have no remorse. And this is very much in line with what the Europeans or the Americans, or I would say the Muzungus, that's the way they think about us. It's very unfortunate. A good many white people don't even think that we are humans as being black people. So death of a black person does not trigger a code of human sympathy in their blood. No. You've seen it. We've seen it over and over. I mentioned to you not too long ago that when President Magufuli died, neither American or British media broadcast the death of a president of Tanzania, in spite of the fact that Tanzania is a member of the British Commonwealth. They didn't mention it. But how many times they have been mentioning the death and the killing of blue-eyed blonde from Ukraine? It has infiltrated even in their political, social, and spiritual life, to the point that even church leaders have been lamenting over the death of a few thousand people in Ukraine. Yet, as you've seen in the demonstrations of the Congolese, Congo has already lost no less than 10 million people. Have you heard these people screaming that there is murder? And these people are being killed by guns supplied to these M23 and the Kagame's forces by the Mzungus themselves. And they are the same people supplying those weapons, supplying propaganda machinery to Museveni and Kagame, killing Congolese people, killing Ugandans. You think they care? No, because it is Africans dying, and those people don't matter. I had a confrontation personally with an American white woman some years ago when kids were killed in an elementary school in Connecticut. Those of you who remember that massacre of little kids, I think 4, 5, 6 years old. And, we were talking and said, oh, this is a horrible situation. And I said, you know what? Yes. But for me, as an African, I've seen so many horrible things like that. How many kids, how many old ladies who can't even speak English have been killed by your forces in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Kuwait, in Somalia, in Congo? Oh, those don't matter. These kids are Americans. That's what matters most, because those kids were killed in Connecticut were predominantly white kids in a very affluent neighborhood, which is predominantly white. That's where really this should be the concern of everybody, including those who are somewhere there in New Zealand. Hell no, I'm not concerned. I feel sorry that kids have died. But we have seen this kind of death in Somalia, in Congo, in Sudan, in Chad, in Iraq, in Palestine,
In
in
Uganda
Lebanon,
itself.
in Uganda too. So what else is new? If we are going to lament over the death of kids in Connecticut, we should equal as much lament over the death of kids and innocent people in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Uganda, in Congo, in Somalia, in Chad, in Darfur. But the white people don't think that way. They really think, oh, we are born to suffer anyway because you are black or you are Africans. That's where I disagree. And when we talk about peace and justice, I know some people are going to jump on my tail tomorrow about this thing, and I stand by my words. When you talk about justice and peace, we want justice and peace for everybody, including you, Tutsi, and me, Muganda. And that Karamoja, and that Muhutu in Rwanda, and that Congolese there in Kivu and the Ituri forest. Yes, but if you think justice is like a cafeteria whereby you pick and choose which one you're going to have on your plate, I would say bologna. And that is when I am really mild. I could have said a worse word than that. But no, we have to have justice for all. We have to respect each other's life. And that goes, you have to admit when you screw up. And definitely, you, the Tutsis, have screwed up big time. You need to be on your knees and beg for God's mercy.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chitu, for that. But I would be interested when you do find out what Abadahemuka means, because in Luganda it kind of rings with Abata. It rings and sounds like Abatawemuka, which would be interesting to see if they have a similar meaning. That would be an interesting if it turns out that way. But we're gonna go on a short break. The studio line is now on the screen, and for our viewers and members in the audience, this is a time for you to prepare your questions, prepare your comments, anything that you would like to ask Mr. Chintu or comment on today's show. Please feel free, and we will be back with those messages after the short break.
Good evening, comrades. Muli mutya abali ewaka n'abali mu diaspora. Mwebale okuteekawo guno omukutu ogutugatta nga bannayuganda era nga banna UFCC abawagira enkola eya Federal System of Governance. Amannya agange nze Malik oba Malcolm, abasinga omumanyi nga Pro Brother Malik X. UFCC njagala egatte buli munnayuganda n'ebirowoozo byabwe. Tuteesize wamu awatali kuyombagana n'okuvvoola. Tusseemu bannaffe ekitiibwa mu ntegeera yaabwe n'emirimu gyabwe. Tulabe nga ensi yaffe etereera. Tulabe nga ensi yaffe efuna emirembe era nga eva mu nfugabbi. Nze sikkiriza mu nkola ey'okwemalirira oba enjogera egamba nti nze mubinkwase. Endowooza ng'eno ya bulabe nnyo eri struggle era yeeyonoonye ebyobufuzi bya Uganda. Y'ensonga ku lwaki mpagira enkola eya federal. Buli omu akulaakulanye state gy'avaamu. Buli state ebe nga yeefuga yokka, geegabana ku by'obugagga byayo. Kino kijja kumalawo obusosoze obwannakyemalira mu ggwanga Uganda. Tewali muntu ali waggulu wa munne, kagabe mawanga oba ddiini. Omulimu guneeno gwe tukola gwannakyewa, nga wankubadde abamuffe tuli bulungi oba nga twesobola. Tugezeeko okussaamu bannaffe ku lukiiko lwa UFCC ekitiibwa. Kale mbaagaliza struggle ennungi ba comrades. Nze nsigadde nga Pro Brother Malik X.
Welcome back from that short break. And you're on the tower at UNN. And today we're talking about the tragedy of sub-imperialists and how Tutsi domination has continued in the Great Lakes region. Hopefully, at this time, you all have been able to forward any messages or questions to our studio line, which is on the screen. And Mr. Chinto, I guess this will be my last question for you today. I want, or you did explain it on the side of what was happening in Rwanda, Burundi, and when the Belgians took over. I want us now to look a little bit more closer to home when Uganda was put together as a colony and the sub-imperialist status that Buganda was given, and how that has informed an attitude or twegayaridde as a nation. We have I don't know how to translate that in English, but as people of Buganda, we have taken on and won this status of being Baganda, but without securing Buganda itself and what's important to Buganda. Like Enono, we haven't taught it down generations, the traditions, the practices, but even most importantly, the political governance of it as a state was in communication with the land, the people. It was a bottom down, and how when given this position as sub-imperialist by the British, it then left us with the attitude and the idea, and we haven't even been able to restore the fundamentals that existed and were supposed to be built on.
Well, you have to understand this. Every
Mm,
society evolves.
mm,
It's a way of nature. Every society
mm,
evolves. Let's look at
mm,
Buganda itself. Buganda
mm,
started as 4 counties
mm.
and it grew up to 20 counties.
20.
However, that does not mean that everyone who was in there was a Muganda. No,
Mm,
we incorporated people from different areas. But
mm,
when we incorporated, there was a core, a foundation upon
mm,
which all this was being built.
mm,
It is for that reason that I mentioned earlier, we had a Katikiro in Mengo who was not a
mm,
Muganda. Apollo Kagwa was a Musoga. But
mm,
because he had been incorporated in Buganda culture and family life, he was no longer Musoga.
mm,
And he did not, I'm sure he knew he was a Musoga by origin, but he did not go across the river and recruit Basoga and fill up the whole Mengo with his own
mm.
clansmen. No,
I see, I see.
because he
Mm,
saw himself now as a Muganda, and his
mm,
mission was to propel and defend this concept of being a Muganda.
mm,
I would see the same thing if I took time to study, that I would find
mm,
somebody in Teso who is actually from Bukedi, but he has now
mm,
become part and a partial of Teso. He's a Musoga, he's a Muteso, and is willing to defend Iteso.
mm,
This is also the same thing in Acholi and any other place you go to. Now,
mm,
people evolve, countries evolve, but what
mm,
should be, there should be something that we call a Muganda, an Acholi, a Langi, a Munyoro, a Munyankore, a Musoga,
mm,
even though you may have come by some circumstances from somewhere else for any other reason. Now,
mm,
before Museveni came about, we had people from that origin. We had, of course, in Uganda, they didn't call themselves Batusi. They went as far as calling themselves Balaro. I'll give you an example. Maxensia, Beni Chiwanuka's wife, was not a Muganda, but she did not behave and act as anything other than being a Muganda, because she had married, she had grown up in among the Baganda. She was married into a Muganda family, and funny enough, her husband became a prominent man, but she never propped up this Batusiism. It is Museveni and his group that brought this cancer and then spread this cancer even among those who are innocent. And those who had this cancer are predominantly the ones who were settled in places like Namtamba, who were actual refugees, who were still bearing those evil spirits that they used to worship when they were still in Rwanda against the Hutus. And they wanted to transplant that into our country in the same way as other people have tried to transplant things which are totally alien. And whenever you transplant something alien, you create a disturbance and you create suffering and death, people. And this is what is happening to us. Had they behaved like normal human beings, we wouldn't be in this predicament. Hadn't we transplanted this act of supremacy, we wouldn't be in this predicament, because Uganda is the only country which has been ruled by a minority regime since the day of independence. When all our other were ruled by majority support. Political parties are here to stay. You cannot deny that. You cannot go back to the idea of monarchy as these guys are advocating in those documents to the UN, because they want to go back to the idea of a supreme monarchy whereby the king Kijeri Umwami is the only supreme power which decides what to do, where even to put a traffic light on the street. That ain't going to work. It can't be. Democracy is here to stay. People have to participate in how their country or their society is managed and run. That is why we are advocating for a federal system whereby people fully participate in running the affairs of their country, in running the economy of their country, in managing the security of their country. But what we have now is an invasion. And by the way, as you all know, yes, we admit we have had some bad governments, but we have never had a government which is so evil and criminal and murderous like this NRM government. Now, you brought out some issues at the beginning of this program, that there are some enablers. Yes, we have some natives who have been brought in the system simply because they are needed to expand the supply of manpower to carry out the programs of Tutsi domination. The Portuguese did that in Angola and Mozambique. They called these native idiots assimilados. They used them to propel the Portuguese domination of the colonies because the Portuguese couldn't supply 500,000 manpower to go to the colonies. They sent maybe a few thousands, but the rest were these assimilados who were used to carry out the orders. You've seen pictures of people being tortured in those detention camps and other slaughterhouses. You will notice that there is always a Mutusi guy sitting on a chair as a supervisor, while an indigenous Ugandan is being supervised to torture an indigenous Ugandan. And this guy is going to show all his physical strength so that the boss can reward him, just like you would do with a dog. You throw in another piece of meat and the dog wags its tail, comes back and does the back. And once it does, if you want, you're playing what is it, throwing this little ball, and the dog picks it up and brings it back to you. You give it a piece of meat, and you throw the ball away, far away, it will go and grab it and bring it back. Yeah, I mean, this is what they are doing to these people. They are nothing but dogs being played on to do the dirty work for them, while the big Rwanda is sitting there watching. We saw that in those people being tortured in Acholiland during this last by-election. The true boss was standing there with his arms around his chest while these wild dogs were beating this member of parliament, dragging him around and throwing him in whatever you call those little vans. They call them whatever they call those vans, that they will take him away, throw him in jail, charge him with any fictitious charge. And the boss was standing there watching, not concerned. And these are the people, you guys who are watching us are now parading as your leaders, which is nonsense. You are being misused. And it's your people dying and suffering while the other guys are enjoying. We have heard of so many innuendos going on in Kampala where these guys are making billions. It's not even millions anymore. They talk in terms of billions, giving themselves fat salaries when you people are suffering and dying. We are standing for justice. We are standing for peace for everybody. But if you stand in our way, then that's different music.
You have to go
We
through.
want peace for everybody. If you are a Munyarwanda and you want to stay in Uganda, you have to behave the way we all behave. But if you think you are different, you are special, and we are supposed to be your servants or slaves, as that Rwabogo said in that audio, then I'm sorry, the music is going to be changed. That's not going to be the way we're going to play the game.
So, Mr. Chintu, we've gotten like a few some messages from our viewers. First, I
Okay.
will start with Princess. Sorry if I butcher your name, but uh, I will say one name, but it will be Princess Nachimbugwe from Ireland. So I will go ahead and play the voice now.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Legend University. But those pig people, I'll call them pink, not white, because they are not white. They think all of them, they are people. We are not people. They call us monkeys. They call us chimpanzees. And they like to kill us and finish it in Africa so that they can conquer and be comfortable to get all minerals and everything should be theirs, not with us, indigenous blackness. They want to take us like a slave, even here where I am. When the landlord come to your house, just say anyhow he likes, not to make about that you are tenant, you are rent his house, and you give him money. Some they don't even give you a warning that maybe tomorrow we'll pay this, or they enter in the house how they like because they have the key. They go over your belongings and search. I don't know what they are searching for. Even their staff working for them, the same thing. But these people, And all Rwandese or Tutsis, they are the same. They care themselves, but not others. And they are very lazy people. They don't want to work. And they want to achieve. And want to abuse each and everybody. So, in Uganda, what we don't have is someone to give people property. They will do it. All of people, they are very annoyed, very aggressive, and they are pushed to the wall.
Mm.
And they push the wall with the graders, not to push on the wall with the hands. I don't say which you don't see or you don't hear. You see it on YouTube and some other pages. But even you don't go home, you hear everything. It is not new. It has been there for a long time. Now they're familiar, they take everything, land, properties of people. They say they are going to take land is for those people who are in diaspora or someone else out of Saudi of Uganda. And you see what they do for immunization for force. Do that. And they are going to punish the parents, to take them to prison. If you don't pay the penalty, you will be in prison. And you are going to be there for ages or to die from there. I'm sorry, I have talked much. Sorry for that. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you for your message. It has been received. Thank you for tuning in, Mr. Chinton.
Well, thank you very much, Princess, for that comment. I certainly agree with you. I want to show you. Let me see if you can.
Yeah, we can see it. A little bit to the right. Yeah. Yes. Now we can see it.
I'd recommend please get this book, Emerging Viruses. The author is right there on the bottom.
Yeah, John Martin.
Leonard
Oh, the
Horowitz.
Leonard.
Yes. Leonard Horowitz. I recommend find this book. I think that man is now dead. In this book, he wrote it some years ago when HIV was the thing. He said they have a plan to wipe out the black people by biological warfare. And this virus, which they call HIV, was manufactured at Fort Detrick in Maryland, which is less than an hour from where I am. Now, Fort Detrick is a U.S. military base whereby they specialize in biological and chemical warfare. And this man revealed that the funding for this particular project was an act of Congress whereby money was appropriated by the U.S. Congress in 1969. Yeah. Major United States Army biological weapons contractors for fiscal year 1969. Millions were appropriated for this center to manufacture something which cannot have a cure, which can kill, and we are going to distribute it. They started in African countries, somewhere in Congo and other locations. And then they found out that it really works. From there on, they spread it to other areas. Here in the United States, they distributed it in two centers, one in San Francisco, another one is in New York, in neighborhoods which were known to be predominantly homosexual people because they wanted to wipe out the homosexuals. And then they denied that they did it. But the evidence is already here in this book with the quotations and the documentation of the US Congress appropriating money for the research, and even the names of people who were involved in this research. One of them is that Dr. Fauci, who has been very, very noisy when it came.
It makes you wonder what created COVID.
Now, after this HIV failed to wipe out the black people, then they discovered Ebola and they spread it out. That one didn't even spread fast enough. Now, let me go back about HIV. They thought that if they spread it within the black community, it's the blacks who are going to die. Unfortunately, the blacks have been very generous. They cross the borders and also distribute their sexual encounters with the non-blacks. So the damn disease started spreading in different unwanted areas, yeah, including the so-called pink ones, as this lady has told us. After this failed, now they find a way of contracting with the Chinese. And thank God the Chinese were very, greedy about money. They manufactured whatever they did, and it blew up within their own faces and spread it to other countries, including this country, which is the center of the criminal activities. Now they have come out with this, then they came up with the West Nile disease. You remember that, West Nile? As if the Lugaras or the Madis are the ones who did it. They are very good at baptizing things. West Nile. And that went around. It didn't do the good job. Now they have come up with the monkey business. Tomorrow it might be lion business. It's now monkey, whatever they call this stupid disease. Anyway, we have a problem as black people, but these problems are manageable if we open our eyes. This is all we need to do. We need to know. In my writing, I have always made the reference that if you are a sheep farmer, like they have in Montana and all these other places, and you have a big ranch and you have sheep, make sure you have a fence on your ranch, because no matter what you do, there will always be coyotes and foxes and bears. And I mean, wild animals. In Africa, we have we have the leopards, we have the lions, we have, all these wild animals. They just want to break into your ranch and eat your goat or your cows or your sheep. And you can't simply say, oh, like I've had so many people say, let's pray God is going to come and help us. God is going to save us. Museveni will go. God is going. And I look at that bloody fool. I said, are you stupid? Are you stupid? You think God is going to come out of the blue sky with some arrows, the angels hanging around on wings and look for Museveni in Rakitura and grab him? Heck no. It is you who has to wake up and do something. Now we have to be aware of these people's evil plans, and we have to be on guard. We should not allow. These people have used these killers we have in our midst in Uganda, the Tutsis. The Tutsis enabling these people to exterminate us by this vaccination by force. We cannot allow this. And I support anybody who tells the parents, don't allow your child to be vaccinated in Uganda. And if possible, and I mean this, if possible, you as a woman, and you are there in the kitchen cooking food, and that food comes to your house saying, I am sent by the government to vaccinate your child. You know what? Pick up that burning firewood, stick it in his nose. Then he will know that he cannot fool around with you. That's the language they can understand. And I'm saying that because I want to quote the Bible. Jesus was a damn good preacher. You know it. He was a good preacher. But there was a moment when he knew that preaching is not going to help. When he found those bastards in the temple, he just whipped the hell out of them. He didn't even preach. He just whipped them. That's what we need to do. Whip these bastards. Because no preaching is going to help you. People wake up. Otherwise, we are going to die like fools. And we can't afford to die here but like fools. No. We got to fight for ourselves. In Ethiopia, there is a tribe. There are many tribes in Ethiopia. There is a section of Ethiopia which is they are Bantu people, not Amharic, not any other ethnic group. These are Bantu people. Now, when the Chinese came and they wanted to have a territory where they can grow food to be shipped 100% back to China, the Amharic dominated group in government gave them this piece of land. It's like saying, oh, the Basoga, okay, now you take over Busoga. They kicked out these natives. And by the way, that area is very, very backward. Very few are even educated. They kicked out those people. And I've seen pictures of those people just uprooted from their homes, thrown out as if they don't matter. And the Chinese brought their tractors and their labor, and they are growing rice to be exported to China. And the Amharics don't give a damn, because these who are now being uprooted from the ancestral land are Bantu group. The same thing these Tutsis see you. If you are being kicked out of Mitana, and as they have started cutting down the banana plantation, or you are being kicked out of Luero or Maogola or Kabula, they don't care, because you are not a Mutusi like them. Can you imagine? Sam Kutesa owns square miles in Maogola. Literally, he owns the whole of Maogola. Yet in 1980, he was running for parliament in Ibanda against Museveni. And of course, he defeated Museveni. Now he owns Maogola. And he is in parliament as a representative of Maogola. For God's sake, any Muganda in Maogola, if you cannot find something to do with this man, then I say you are abdicating your responsibility as a Muganda to protect Buganda. You mentioned the word protecting our identity. You cannot protect your identity as a Muganda, as a Musoga, as an Acholi, as a Rangi, as any other ethnic indigenous group of Uganda by sitting on your fat behind and doing nothing. We have to do something. And we have to respect our heritage, not only in the language, in the culture, and I would say even formation of our families. Let our families be reflective of our identity as Acholis, as Langis, as Banyoro, as Baganda, or whatever we are. We are not going to sell our identity simply because we want to get favors from these bastards who just came across the border. No, that is not going to cut the cake.
Then we also have another message, and this is from Peter Simon. I'll go ahead and play that right now.
Hello, this is Peter Simon here in London. Everybody agrees with me that this program toward UNN is becoming so toxic. Why do I say toxic? I mean, it's not balanced. You need to balance the program. A program that is focusing on the blame on an entire race of Batusi as a wholesale. I suppose, and I would like to suggest that you try and balance your program. If there is anybody answerable, focus on particular individuals who are responsible for either trustees or whatever case they have to answer, but not put in a blanket all the entire race of Batusi. It's like character assassinating or categorizing or Buganda. I used to hear that Buganda are very hypocrite, very unreliable and trustworthy, to the extent that they have even murdered their own kings, and the others have poisoned their own kings. But I wouldn't go out in public and really start accusing the entire race of Buganda. I would point out the particular individuals who are responsible. And I would like to suggest that this program be balanced. And then when you bring out statements, be entirely sure that those statements are credible. Otherwise, the program will become so toxic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon Peter, for your message, and we have received it. But in terms of things being credible, all our sources, we even go as far as sharing them with the audience if you want access to these resources when it comes down to things being credible. And yeah, I will leave it at that. Um, and Mr. Chintu, if you
Yeah, well, Simon Peter, I don't know what to tell you. You've made a very, very false statement. Everyone agrees with me
agrees
that
with me, everybody.
who is everybody? I am one
When
of
did you
those
get
things.
that?
I am not with you on that point. So you cannot just generalize that everybody agrees with you. Heck no, nobody agrees with you. In fact, if you want to say everybody, you should qualify that all my fellow Tutsis agree with me that we are offended or we feel the pain because you have dug too deep in our behind. Of course, we have dug too deep in your behind because you made it possible for us to dig deep into you, and we have exposed the true colors of your own people. So please, I would advise you, think twice before you open your mouth. Now, you have said that we have generalized. Isn't it your Museveni who said, we Baganda, they are the enemies of Buganda, they are enemies of the country, and I'm going to crush you. And he has done it. He's crushing us. Now, I have made it very clear to you and to our entire audience that these problems are not Museveni. Because Museveni, even if he is 90 or even 100 years, you have been doing this kind of shit for over 400 years. Museveni wasn't born by then. It is you people who are criminals by birth. That's why you were kicked out of that corridor of Ethiopia because of your poisoning people, giving them poison in sugar canes, and they kicked you out of there. You came roaming around, settled in Rwanda. You killed all the people who were leaders of Rwanda, including the kings of Rwanda and the chiefs. That was not Museveni. It was Tutsis. And you were not born by then. So your ancestors and your uncles and your cousins and your brothers are doing this same thing today. Those people being killed in Congo, in Uganda, in Rwanda. Museveni is not busy night and day killing people in Uganda, in Rwanda. It is your people. We have shown pictures of some of you saying, we shall kill to keep Museveni in power. And indeed, you have done that. And Museveni didn't arrest that bastard. No. He just smiled. Boy, you've done a good job. When he sent this hooligan to Kasese to murder the Mumbere's supporters, he used, this man is not a Mutusi. He used him. When he has done the job, they brought him back and gave him promotion for a job well done. That's what I call a house dog that has done a good job hunting the deers. So please be careful when you are approaching us, because we know more than you do, in case you didn't know anything about your own ancestors. And look at yourself. You don't even mention the crimes you people are doing to our people. How many of our young brothers and sisters and old uncles and nephews dying in concentration camps at your people's hands? The problem is beyond and wider than Museveni. It encompasses all of you. I mentioned how many, I think it was about 19 young Ugandans, so-called Ugandans who are not Ugandans, sent to Algeria to study petroleum engineering. There is Choli, there is no Muganda, there is no Munyankore, there is no Munyoro. It's all Tutsis. I do. The ambassador of Uganda in New York is a Mututsi from Kigali. Does Kagame have a Muganda ambassador in Britain or in France? No. I mean, don't think we are stupid, my dear. And don't bring your stupidity. Thank God you learned Uganda and English, which is good, because it's always nice to learn other people's languages. But when it comes to Uganda's affairs, let the Uganda indigenous people take care of their problems and their responsibilities, and you have no say whatsoever in Uganda's affairs. You are a foreigner. And if I were you, I would never make a phone call to this program, because this is for Ugandans, and you ain't it. Stay away from us if you want peace.
And just a remark, I'd like to say that the Tutsis are not a race, the Baganda are not a race. This is not some racialization of peoples. This is direct historical evaluation, as Mr. Chintu has laid out, of an ethnic group for more than 400 years. And on top of it, everything is documented, so we don't have to go through that again. So we'll move on to our next viewer, and this is Raymond from Germany. I'll go ahead and play Raymond's messages.
Thank you very much, Desire and Mr. Chintu. I'm a caller from Germany. Further to contribute on the show, I think of recent we have seen that with the troubles that have been in Mozambique, the French reached out to the Rwandese so that they could help them to go and act as mercenary soldiers in a region where France has interests of gas, that part of Mozambique that was attacked by insurgents. So the French reached out to the Rwandese and they buried or whatever hatchet that they had between them, because remember previously France was accusing the RPF of the various tragedies that happened during the genocide. So they were trading insults. But now, when France was looking for mercenaries to hire, they came and armed the Rwandese and actually are even sponsoring them militarily so that they can go and sort out the insurgency that is happening in Mozambique, so that in turn the French can exploit the gas wells that are there. So this further highlights the theme of today, that there are various deals. For instance, whatever is going on in Congo, the powers that are behind are hiring these same guys and giving them guns to go there and disturb, because these M23 guys claim that they want to be part of Congolese army and things like that. But you're not an indigenous person there. How do you start dictating terms yet you don't even make up 5% of the population? Now, the other thing is that in Uganda, it's we the Buganda who have actually kept these guys in power. Because when you look right now, the Karamojong, I've been reading the papers of recent, they are murdering whoever is a collaborator. The ISO agents, the fellow Karamojong who acts as informers, are being murdered. There's a way in which they are tracking these guys. But you look in Buganda, the people who are actually acting as the collaborators are working freely. Take, for instance, the number of noob supporters who have been incarcerated in prison, the ones who have been killed there. Supposedly, they had put their efforts to good use and actually went to war. It is better to die with your strength in battle than dying in jail while being tortured over no crime. So this really beats my understanding, dear brothers and sisters. Why don't we actually wake up and know that there is a war being waged against us? Get out of these bloody elections and actually get into battle. Identify your enemies. There is no need of playing fools, yet you're actually at war. These guys are at war. The atrocities they're committing in whatever prisons where they take these guys are enormous. How do you start cutting out someone's fingers? For what? Why don't you at least die on battle than dying defenseless? Thank you very much. The other point where I may actually not very well agree with Mr. Chintu is the point of actually shunning, especially the women. If you know that you can use maybe their women to actually get information out of them, it's not a bad idea. Go there when you're a man, but you know that you can actually use that to get information out of them, because we also need to know what they are cooking. We also need to know what they are cooking. So, because if we totally shun, just like they come to us seeking information, now we could actually use them unknowingly when they don't know to get information out of them and be on the guard. Because still we can't fight the war blindly. That's my suggestion. Thank
you. Thank you so much for your message. We have received it, and Mr. Chintu, if you'd like to address.
Thank you, Mr.
As requested.
After looking at all that evidence, and I'm sorry to say this, and then you hear these Rwandese Binyandaro coming up and giving us nonsense. Don't they think that we understand what is going on? Look at our people who have been killed by such a hooligan. And it's horrible to see a non-Ugandan standing in Uganda and running his mouth like that and getting away with it, simply because he is supported by a system which is alien to our country, and all they want is to kill our people. That's horrible. We cannot accept that. And I think, anyway, there are some people who don't have shame in their blood, because Simon Peter should have shame in his blood, but he doesn't have it because he's one of that. He could be one of those. Maybe that's the one who is purporting to be Simon Peter, but it's the same person who claims to be killing people, and he has already done it. So anyway, God is there. Raymond mentioned something very interesting. He mentioned the French being interested in exploiting natural gas in Mozambique, and for that reason, do anything to make sure that they can achieve their goal at any cost. And humanity is not one of those things that they will consider.
Yeah.
They brought in RPF. I don't think they brought in RPF on their own accord. I am very suspicious the Americans were behind it, because they are going to share the spoils of that natural gas. Now, he also Raymond lamented over the fact that NUP supporters are dying in detention and the slaughterhouses around the country after having done virtually nothing. Don't forget, these young men and women were well registered at the NUP headquarters in Kamocha. And we now know that they are being, what should I call it, blindfolded. Now the talk is, we are going to remove the dictator by peaceful resistance, by peaceful means or resistance, whatever they want to call it. Now,
Non-violence.
anybody knows that you do not remove a brutal, murderous dictator like Museveni through voting. You know, there is a saying, a definition of a fool is when he does the same thing over and over and expect to get different results. This so-called voting has been practiced over and over and has never worked and will never work. Now, if you still want to plow into the same system, then you are not telling us anything new except telling us that you are a fool. We are not willing to be foolish. These people are being blindfolded by those guys who purport to be their leaders, and they are leading them into the grave, because hundreds and hundreds of real, honest supporters are dead, and thousands are in detention centers as a result of being supporters of this movement, including, nothing makes me feel so sad as when I remember Mohammed Segrinya, who laid his life, and look where he is now. And nobody gives a damn about him. They're all out there dancing and having a good time. When the poor guy, I don't know if he's still alive or dead. He could as well be dead by now. And who cares? Nobody cares, including those he was willing to lay his life for. This is a betrayal of your own people.
How can you be peaceful under gunshots?
Honestly, this misleading people in something you know does not work. It is just like telling someone that I'll give you $1,000 US if you drink a whole jerrycan, big, 4 gallons of waragi. You know damn well he's going to die. Why do you lead him into this death trap? That, oh, it's okay. If you can consume this whole waragi, I'll give you $1,000. Who would want to have $1,000 in cash? You are misleading these people into death. And this has to stop. That's why we need to come back to the drawing board if we are honest. Unfortunately, that is one commodity I have found to be very rare, if non-existent, among Ugandan so-called political leaders. It's not there. They're not honest.
Well, Mr. Chintu, we have some other messages here as well. This is Aisha from the UK. We'll go ahead and give these ones a listen as well.
Of course, bannange mbalamusiza. Of course, monkey business bagikola dda. Lion business bagikola dda. Titwagala kumanya nabo manya nti nno nti ebintu bibeerawo. Monkey business, lion business, ebisolo byonna babikuttemu. Ekyo tukikkirize ate si mu kigaana okuggyako golira, ne golira bagiggyeemu. Kaakati tuleetereeze monkey business baagikwatamu dda. Ebisolo byaffe byonna bye baasookerako ne babikyusa, obukolwa ne babukyusa. Kati tulina kwebeereramu nga ffe abantu. Bannange mbeegayiridde. Monkey business baagitabula dda. Lion, tiger, byonna baabikyusa. Kati tulina kwebeereramu ffe ng'abantu. Kubanga ebisolo baakwata empologoma ne bagiteeka mu tiger, ne bakwata kino ne bakiteeka wali, ne babikola cross breeding. Kati ffe abantu tulina kwebeereramu. Weekiri? Amiina. Oh, Simon Peter is a very nice man. Ayina speech gy'awadde naye mumuwulirize. Ekyana kyattu ekyo ekyo tutta programu kinkwatire ku ttama. Kingambire nkyagala nnyo. Omwana wattu, omwana muwala, kinkwatire ku ttama okingambire nkyagala nnyo. Ebintu bitabuse. Oyo mugambe yeebale taata. Oyo taata wange mugamba nzaale, mugambe ndi wa mamba. Bannange oyo omwami akoze ensonga naye kyano ekyo kinkwatire ku ttama.
That was our last message from Aisha. Okay. And then I'll go on and play another message, and this is from Omulangira Lumama Kalemera.
Good evening and good afternoon. I'm very grateful for the wonderful production and presentation of this evening's talk show. Particularly, I'm incensed and unapologetically, I'm venerated, and I really find it unbecoming for any Tutsi to assume they have an audience to talk to indigenous communities of the Ugandan community, whereas they actually have no legal standing, safer to say that they can even think people are dumb and they don't even understand the chronological history of these insensate unworthy people, to see criminals. It's rather unbecoming that we have these people assume that they can come and talk over us. How indignant these people can be. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. I'll go on and play one. We can start comment on those two. That's far.
Okay. Well, I agree with the Omulangira Lumama Kalemera. I cannot add on anything. He has put it even much better than I could have put it. The other lady, I don't even know where she comes from and what was her point, except that I enjoyed hearing her laughs. That's all I can say. Now, regarding the question you asked me earlier, what is Abada Hemuka, it fits exactly what we have been talking about, that these people are liars, liars, and liars. Now, they used the word Abada. They said Abanyarwanda, Abarundi, Abadahemuka. Isn't that what it said?
Yes, if we could go back, please, to the slides. I'll ask the producer because it's in the first how they address themselves. They say president of the Abanyarwanda, Abarundi, Abadehemuka, yes. And then they
Stop
list
right
Singo, Buganda.
Okay, all right. Now, the word Abadehemuka means those who are always honest, who will never betray. Who are always honest and they will never betray. Are you kidding? You know what it reminds me? No, it reminds me of a joke that was given to me not too long ago. That a politician went to a cafe and was having some chai or coffee, and there was a beautiful lady sitting there. She looked like she was ready for any eventuality. And the guy introduces himself, like I would say, hello, my name is David. And she said, nice to see you. My name is Brenda. And what are you? What do you do? And the guy said, I am a politician and a very honest man. And she said, thank you. I am a prostitute and I'm still virgin. Now, if a prostitute can still be virgin and a politician says, I'm an honest man, then Omdehemuka is the one who never lie, who is honest and will never betray. Can you imagine that coming out of a Mutusi?
It's the irony is even on the stance at which they were making this claim. You're angry about Hutus getting some self-determination in post-colonial Rwanda, and you're in the same letter you're saying that your king should reign in Rwanda and Burundi, and you're the ones who have the key to honesty, and you will never betray. You've already betrayed the people on so many levels that you're living around and in company too. And also honesty, you do not self-proclaim honesty. People give that to you. There are just some social cues and ways of conducting yourself amongst people that are missing in many of these interactions. But are we surprised? Because at the other hand, and it has been, of course, that's why you're found committing genocide in the Congo. That's why you're found committing genocide in Acholi. That's why you're found committing genocide right now killing people in Mozambique. That's why you're giving into all these cheap. That's why you find the Tutsi organized aristocratic group behaving in this kind of way. This is self entitlement. And the worst of them all, honest and the
Well,
one who will never be betrayed. You've betrayed Africans, that's for one part.
and the same guy tells you, everyone agrees with me. Are you curious,
Everyone.
serious? Which everyone? Did you do a thorough survey of everybody that listens to us? And they said, oh, yes, we all agree with the Simon Peter Munyarwanda. Come on.
Mm. Mm.
It's not even worth my saliva to talk about.
So we do have some voice messages, and I'll go into the other messages that we have. So there is another voice message. This is also again from Raymond in Germany. So I'll go ahead and play it.
Then I would also like the previous caller to read Mr. Mohozi's tweets and see how he basically classifies that the Tutsis. He refers to everything as the Tutsis, how they're indomitable. So I think it's not this program that has classified a particular tribe or something. It's them themselves who are classifying themselves as so. Let the previous caller go to Twitter and read Mr. Moses' lamentations about Tutsis.
And that was commentary, so I'll continue with some of our other messages that we have. So this this viewer asked, this is from Frank, what could have influenced Tshisekedi to allow Uganda to send its troops to Congo, well knowing Uganda and Rwandan leaders are allies and supporters of M23 who are causing trouble to Congolese?
I would not be able to enter into the brains of Tshisekedi to figure out how and why he did this. But the little I know, and I cannot claim to be an expert, the Tshisekedi regime is controlled by the Americans. And the Americans will tell him what to do, and he's going to do it. Remember, I told you a disclosure that the American ambassador invited the Congolese, the Rwanda, and the Uganda ambassador in Kinshasa, and they gave them talking points handed to him by Kagame. Now, Kagame is giving the ambassador, the American ambassador, to tell the Ugandan and the Rwandese ambassadors in Kinshasa to be the dogs out there in the marketplace, preaching the gospel as designed by Kagame. And of course, Kagame didn't design it by himself. He designed it with these pink people, as one of the ladies called them. Yeah, you can see the game is being played. Now, and the Congolese have risen up and expressed their hatred of Rwanda for having invaded their country and killed their people. Now, they kicked out the Rwanda airline. It can't go to Kinshasa. But through Kisekedi, whose margin of thinking is very, very rudimentary, to be honest with you, he's allowing Uganda airline, I don't even know whether Uganda has an airline that is worth being called airline, to fly into Congo. And I mean, if you are a Congolese, the first person I would kick in the butt would be Kisekedi, because he's acting like a fool. Is there a difference between Museveni and the Kagame? Is there a difference between the Rwanda airline and the Uganda airline? Now, these same Tutsis are going to be flying Uganda airline into Congo and doing the havoc they have been doing all along. They don't need to go by Rwanda airline. M23 is supported by both Kagame and Museveni. And if Kisekedi can't see that, but I know he sees it, but his way of thinking is very, very rudimentary, to put it mild. And that's why the Congolese people are in trouble. And I think the Congolese people would have to start with getting rid of Kisekedi before they start fighting a war with Rwanda and Uganda. Because Kisekedi is a stumbling block, just like some of our people we have in Kampala who purport to be political leaders and leading their people into death camps every single day. And that's unacceptable. You are not going to develop a country. You are not going to have a peace and a justice in a nation that where such a myopic people have a leading role in determining the political destiny of a nation.
And if I can add just a little bit, that's why it's important for us to know that when we say we want change, we want at least power to be redistributed back to the people. And that's why we advocate for federacy. Because now it's like the people of Congo have risen up, but soon they will be repressed all over again very quickly. This republicanism and the local native people not having power makes it so much easier for these imperialists, the Americans, the British, to always find a way to just press people back down. and the conditions then become worse. Because they have partnerships with these people all over the continent. If you shut down Kagame, Museveni will rise up. And we're not going to pretend like Kagame just didn't come to Mohozi's birthday a few months ago. This was publicized, and they swore allegiance to alliance to each other in public. So we should really be serious, and we should really take it to heart when we ask for federacy, because it's for our own good. We're protecting ourselves from everyone, our bad leaders and the foreigners. So, Mr. Chintu, we have another message, and this is a viewer from South Africa. I'll go ahead and play it as well.
Kulamusizaako mwannyinaze mu studio ne namuzaako ne mukadde waffe Kintu. Nze Kintu webala okusomesa, webala otubugolola obwongo n'amaaso tulabe gye tulaga. Naye nze ndabira ddala NUPO terina kyeyinza kukolera kuba ejjudde batuusi. Ate kineewuunyisa Kyagulanyi ne bamulaga abantu abo abamulinaanye tabategeera, ayinza okuba abategeera naye abaana bano abagobereza batalina bifo bensaasira kuba bali mu katyabaga kennyini. Tebaagala kuwuliriza bigambo bye babagamba, tebaagala kuwuliriza UNN, bali mu bintu bimu. Kati balina ekintu ekyo kye bawoza kunga naye sitegeera ki kye bakunga. Buli nnaku babakwata, babasiba, babatwala mu zikampeyini ezitategeerekeka, n'obabuuza muli ku kigendererwa ki. Banne muzeeyi Kintu mwebala otubuusa ffe amagezi tugafunye. Bwe tunaaba bameka tujja kwenunula eggwanga, naye bali abaana abamu bawagira n'ekintu kye bawagira tebakimanyi. Bw'ogamba otya omukulembeze atannalinnya mu ntebe nti Kyagulanyi tawabulwa, tasobya, taweebwa magezi, bali ku zisirogani zokka. Ntebe mu ntebe, Kyagulanyi tasobya, tawabulwa. Kati bali ku kimukunga, ensi yonna eyogera ekigambo kunga, naye nze amakulu gaakyo sigategeera kye bakunga. Mwebale nnyo, mwebalire ddala okutusomesa. Ozza ekintu ekirala, muzeeyi Kintu, tukoze tutya okufuna abantu abalala abagezigezi mu zi states endala? Kuba twetaaga states zonna ez'Ankole, Karamoja, Lango, zonna tubenga abantu bonna tubayina wano, beejenti abajja wano ate ne badda ku ground ne basomesa enjiri ne ku platform kuno nga bajja kwegamba tubeere ne bonna, oli asomesa mu Lulango, asomesa mu Lulugwala, asomesa mu Luki, mu Chapadola. Banna ensonga eyo mbadde nsaba tuginyiikirire nnyo. Simanyi we tunaakola magezi kigootuwa okulabika nti tufuna abantu abo mu zi provinces ezo endala ab'ennimi zonna ez'enjawulo. Mmwe kati abasomesa mu Luganda we muli, abasomesa mu Luzungu tubayina, naye twetaaga ennimi ezo, ow'Oluswayiri, ow'Olukonjo, Lugubala, Karamajong, Iteso, ezo zonna state. Mbadde kyensaba muze ekintu, simanyi magezi kyawo ge tugenda kukola.
Webale nnyo ssebo. What you have said is very, very important. We need people from every part of the country. And I believe, if I understand you very well, you are talking about indigenous Ugandans. Well, you do not manufacture them, but they just prop up and they present themselves on the platform. Now, I'm going to take a little bit longer to get this very clear, because people have to understand that when we talk about a new Uganda, a new direction away from the so-called current political gladiators in the field, we are not undermining or despising age. No. We are appreciating commitment, we are appreciating self-sacrifice, we are also appreciating intellectual contribution. Many of you remember the name Tom Mboya. Tom Mboya, at the height of his political activity, was only 28 years old. That is much younger than some of you guys in Kampala today. There was Stephen Biko in South Africa. I don't know his age, but we can find that out. By the time he was killed, he was a young man too. They had Garvey in America during the in the early 1900s. He's the one who led the group that we should all go back to Africa and get the hell out of America because we shall never have peace with white people. And he was damn right. We are still seeing it up to now. There is going to be no peace with black people. Now, the civil rights movement, whereby a lot of young people, including Dr. King, was manned by very, very dedicated, unselfish people like Stokely Carmichael. There was another guy called Brown who discovered the phrase "burn, baby, burn" during the riots of 1968. And there were many others. One of them was Reverend Walter Fauntleroy. I happen to be a very close friend of Walter Fauntleroy. And this man who just died was a congressman from Georgia. I forgot. Anyway, Walter Fauntleroy, I think he was 19 or 20 years old during that time. And I asked him a question. I said, why did you call Dr. King your Musei? He said, because I think Dr. King by then was about 24, 25 years old. To them, Stokely Carmichael was 19, by the way, 19 years old. And these guys were all young guys. What I'm saying is, in spite of being young guys, they were brilliant people. They were intelligent people. They were unselfish. They were not looking for flamboyance that I am high up here, I got this, I got that, look at me, I am very rich. No, they were not even rich, by the way. Because what Walter Fauntleroy told me, they used to beg for money if they are going to travel from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia. They didn't have sources of income, but they were dedicated. And whenever they opened their mouths, they were not talking about how many girlfriends I have at home. They were talking about the suffering of their people. They were projecting the situation in their community as black people. Tom Mboya, you may have read some of his writings. You would even think he has a PhD from Oxford. But he was a clerk in the Railway Workers Union. And I bet you, we can check. I don't know if Tom Mboya ever finished a senior secondary school of that day. But the intelligence he depicted, the focus of a new Kenya he displayed. Can you find the same elements among these people in Kampala today?
Mr.
Can you
Chintu, they spent how many? It was a whole video of just the encouragement to wash the car that was held by by the taxing council that came in for now our newly elected president. That is where we are at as a nation, where even our struggle is becoming not led with a spark of intelligence.
Yeah, if we can be demonized, if we can be, uh, if our brains can be squeezed to nothing by people we are trying to follow, what do you expect out of those who are following them? That's what we call
Exactly.
a blind man leading a blind. You cannot fight this revolution of liberating Uganda from Tutsis when you are led by people who cannot tell the difference between a banana plantation and a cactus tree. You cannot. Uganda needs people, and I'm saying this too. I don't care whether I will be alive or not, but you Ugandans, you better get your act together and look very closely to who you are following. And if you continue following people because of this sensationalism, because we went there and we drank a lot and we found so many nice girls shaking their big butts from
Yeah,
Rwanda, and yeah, they have masanyalas, whatever the bullshit they have. I mean, if that is the way you are going to follow this movement, saving your country, then you better as well stay home and eat binyebwa if you have them. This is the tragedy of Uganda. One guy called us one time and they said there is this new movement of Jangu Tukone, so that we can all be stupid and dumb. That's what they are doing to you. Because they themselves cannot produce anything intelligent, and they want everyone to be part of that mediocre camp. It doesn't work. You're not going to build a country that way. In fact, that's why Museveni is laughing all the way to the bank. He says, look at them. Whomever they bring up, he can't even tie his own shoes. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. We are talking about citizenship. We are talking about nation building. We are talking about redemptive work of our country. And you can't even come up with a program of action how we can rebuild the education system. All you want is to drink, dance, and sing. I have not seen any leader in any country I have visited that spent all his time or even half of his time just socializing and drinking and having fun. This is why countries like Congo, Kisekedi is one of those, because we already know that he will give you only 6 hours in a day to think about national issues. The rest of the time, he's just serving his bestial instincts. You can't lead a country like Congo, like not any country, even if it is a tiny one like Burundi.
Because now that you've mentioned that, and it is of the importance that we are serious about who we follow. Because Ugandans, if you decide to sleep and not be serious, they are preparing your next dictator. It might not be Muhozi, but whoever is coming, if we're unserious, is the next dictator. And they will be worse because the conditions are not getting any better. And with that being said, Mrs. I think Samuel Peter is back, and since we believe in a democracy and democratic participation, I'll go ahead and play his voice.
Spear Simon here, again here in London. Mr. Kintu, two wrongs cannot make right. Two wrongs never make right at all. And you claim to be religious, you believe in the same God. If the same God, the merciful God, is the one you worship, and the one I worship, I suppose we should change, or you should change, I should change, we should change the goalposts and start preaching reconciliation and love rather than hatred. Hatred will not build the nation. You're trying to rectify what's wrong and what went wrong, but you cannot reach the desired goalpost by also preaching the same violence. I still insist that we need to change the goalpost and preach love and reconciliation and work together to put right what is not right. We all want to live with each other in harmony, in love, as brothers and sisters, people who come into this planet Earth through the same process that you and I came through. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Simon, for your message. And one thing about marginalization and subjugating of the peoples, especially if methods of subjugation and oppression are going to be as hard as, no, whatever level they are at, but they involve the rampant killing, putting people to hunger, putting people out of school, impoverishing people. Please go do some reflection. You cannot then turn around and tell those same people how they receive this violence, how they interpret this violence, how they choose to address this violence, because then you're still violating. Then you cannot sit and talk to us about reconciliation. You cannot reconcile if you cannot even let us understand how we have been violated. Give us the space, give us the time, and what we're saying and speaking is not hatred. You only view it as hatred because you choose your lens every turning point, but because your lens are convenient. But with that being said, Mr. Chintu, if you would like to reply to Peter Simon.
Well, I actually, my first instinct tells me I shouldn't talk to him by any standards. However, I'm going to tell him one thing. I like his statement. It's a very good statement, but he has sent it to the wrong people. If he is a good person, and I presume, Peter Simon, I don't know you, but I presume you're a good person. I hope you are. I want you to assure me, before you call back again, that you have delivered that same message to Museveni and the Kagame. If you can assure me you have delivered those words to Museveni and the Kagame, I'll buy you a case of beer in appreciation for your effort.
And then continuing, we have another message from Aisha, and then we have also another one from Chief Mo in UAE. So I'll go ahead and play those ones as well.
Bannange munsonyiwa okuseka. Munsonyiwa okuseka. Kubanga emboozi enyumidde. Nsese lwakuba emboozi n'okumanya kw'olina n'ekitiibwa kye mulina n'ekye mukola byonna mbigasse wamu n'enseka busesi. Awo sesesa awo ŋŋaanye. Mulina knowledge. Leero oyogedde n'ogamba nti nedda kakati kambeere serious. Nange mbaddeko serious. Naye okukambuwala tekubeera kubi. Tukwataganye. Bannange mbeeyanzidde ddala abawuliriza bonna ku mukutu. Tuyina kati okutambula. Tugambe nti nedda tukooye. Federo tukooye. Kati tutambuliddewo. Okusanyuka okuseka munsonyiwe. Kubanga omuntu teyeesesasesa. N'ebimpitiriddeko. Ntunuulira omuwala omulungi, ntunuulira taata omulungi, ntunuulira buli kimu. Kati awo mbadde nsese busesi. Bannange munsonyiwe. Kati forward we go. Teri kudda mabega. Tutambule. Nze nabagambye. Tutambule kati teri kudda mabega akwata ekigere oba onoomukola otya tutambule ndi nammwe munsonyiwe kwesisaasasa kubanga abakyala abaganda tebazeka we bati mukama abakuuma.
Thank you so much, Aisha, for your message. I'll play also the one from Chief Mo, and then Mr. Chitu, we can comment on both of them. Go, yes?
Well, good morning, listeners, and good morning, Mr. Kintu, good morning, Desire. I'm from Dubai here, but to respond to Simon Peter, if he's talking about preaching peace and reconciliation and all that, he should remember the statement which was once stated by the president himself. Yayingira na nyondo ajja kubawo na nyondo. So a dictator of a kind, you don't think you have a solution to do away with him, except you have to act wild like he does. There is no peace to make peace away from, for us to live away from Museveni.
Thank you so much, Chief Moore. And those are the two last messages of our show today. Mr. Chintu, if you would like to go on and comment on both from both views.
Well, I agree with that gentleman. There is anybody who tells you, let us find a peaceful solution, a non-violent solution to a brutal dictator like Museveni, I would say he has been sent to hoodwink you so that the status quo can maintain its grip on your life. It is the same thing we found in when we were analyzing the economic situation in Africa. These Muzungus will tell you, oh, you want to get out of poverty? Increase your production of coffee, tobacco, and all the things, and export more so that you can earn more money and you will be poor no more. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Instead of telling you that this is what you have to do to get out of poverty, control your resources, manufacture them or turn them into consumer goods and sell them at a higher price. For example, I talked very much at length with respect to cotton. Instead of selling a importer of cotton to Germany or to England, let me sell finished products like shirts, underwear, you name it, and make more money. The shirt I am wearing today is made out of combed cotton. And I can bet you, if I dismantle this shirt, the amount of cotton that went into it is probably a handful. But the price I paid for it is over $70. Okay? If I manufacture this shirt in Masaka, even if I sell it for $30, one shirt, it is better. I will earn more money than selling raw cotton, because to earn $30, I would have to sell maybe a whole bag, a kutia of cotton. But this shirt did not even take more than a handful of real cotton to manufacture it. So this is what we are talking about. If you want to talk about reconciliation, peaceful coexistence, and we are all came from on this planet Earth the same way, of course. But sometimes I wonder whether some of these people who came on this planet Earth didn't go through the natural birth canal I went through. Maybe they came out of the behind. That's why they are behaving like that. That's why they have no remorse to humanity. That's why they can make a profession out of killing and killing and killing every day. They don't even talk about, building a school. When they say school which we build, they think of burning it down. When they saw Masiro of Kasubi, which we built in 1800 or 1700, they want to burn it down. And you tell me you came through the same birth canal as I did? Hell no. I'm going to check how you came on this planet. No, this is where the matter is. So any of you people who still hold those kind of beliefs that you are going to sit here and talk so smoothly as if you've been drinking marwa, it is not going to cut the cake, because we are not that stupid. And that's an insult to us and an insult to our intelligence. And it should stop.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chintu. Uh, right now, we're winding towards the end of our show. If you would please give your closing remarks, and we will wrap up today's topic.
Yeah, thank you very much. It has been a very busy and provocative session, to say the least. But my closing point is on the issue of peace and justice. One of the problems that has brought Uganda to where it is we have over the years tried to transplant irrelevant, destructive concepts and brought them into our country, and we lost track of who we are. And that is why we are where we are today. If we did not transplant these alien concepts, whether they were from the English or Americans or any other foreigners, we wouldn't be in this predicament. We would look at each other as Ugandans, as Baganda, as Achoris, as Langis, as Basoga. And it would not have been easy for these people from Rwanda to come and infiltrate and take advantage of our loose elements within our society to actually usurp this country, which they have done very successfully. And we are paying the price. Now, it reminds me something very important. Back in 1961, before we got independence, the Secretary General of KY stood in Kamuj by the name of Masembe Kamali, stood in Kamuj at a very public rally and proclaimed in Uganda that wakiri okufa okuggwaawo ne tutafugibwa mu Katoliki. N'olwekyo we have to bring down Ben Kiwanuka. By then he had been declared Prime Minister. And the people clapped. They thought that was interesting. In the same stupid way, I have seen people clapping at Museveni when he said, no one in Uganda is intelligent enough to lead this country. Some of his ministers were sitting on the front row and they were all clapping, well spoken, which means all of you, you're all damn fools. I'm the only one who has brains. And they said, wonderful, well spoken. That dumbness, that stupidity has to stop. Because as Professor Peter Gukina said, before we even tackle the issue of Batusi or Museveni, we need to sit down as Ugandans and reflect at the mistakes we have made, correct them, reconcile with each other. And I think he said, don't fool me that there is no animosity between Baganda and Achoris, that there is no animosity between Achoris and Langis, that there is no animosity between Baganda and Banyoro or Baganda and Basoga. We have these things, they're there, but they are manageable. Because if we don't solve them today and get rid of these Batusi, tomorrow it could be Sudanese or Chinese, because they'll find our weaknesses and take advantage of them. Ladies and gentlemen, let us get on our knees and look at each other, especially we, the indigenous Ugandans, reflect on some of the mistakes our parents or grandparents, for that matter, have made. Correct them. I was in a meeting some years ago in London with my fellow Buganda, and they were saying we cannot accept to push further and remove Museveni because we do not have one of us ready to take over. If Museveni falls today, it is going to be Sendeso taking over because he's the only one standing up. And he's unacceptable to us and unacceptable to England. That mentality has... Yes. And I can give you the names I was with in that meeting. I'm just holding them back for good reasons. That kind of attitude is still there among Ugandans, and more so among Baganda. These are the things we have to correct. And look at each other with peace, so that we can pursue peace and justice. Whether you are Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, whatever you believe, even if you are pagan, nobody is going to tell you, I hate peace or I don't like justice. No, we all want it. Why don't we go for it for God's sake, if not for Uganda's sake? Thank you very much, and I hope we shall be together next week, God willing, or inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Mr. Chintu. I'd like to thank everyone who's been here with us today. I hope that this has been like knowledge has been added unto us. I want to thank everyone who tunes in every Sunday to watch us, to be a part of this. Thank you to all the contributors, people who contribute and participate and are a part of the show as we unwind and just go through all the information that we have. But as Mr. Chintu has debriefed on everything, I'll only add a little bit on what he said. Until we organize ourselves as Ugandans and sharpen our mindset, we're not going to be able to lift ourselves to rise to the occasion and to free ourselves. Without us reconciling amongst each other, not only just amongst each other, but also within ourselves as well, as a person, go reflect, and as a group, to have a group reflection and reconcile all these territories and be transparent and open, and then accept our history for what it was or what it is, both the positives and the negatives, we shall not be able to rise to the occasion. We must change our mindsets always, and then we must bring this new mindset towards our revolution. But with that being said, all these things are not shallow, they're deeper than surface level. Continue doing research on your own independently. Continue spreading the message in your friend groups and to people you know, and continue exploring this further, because everything is set up for your own demise. So make sure that you also plot and plan so that it does not actually distract you. But it's always a pleasure being here. Until next Sunday, inshallah. Akume atakumira mpera.
ngamba ankole mulimu abantu bwe bati Tutsi, Abayima, Abakiga n'Abanankole. Kati Abakiga n'Abanankole babayita abiiru, ate bali baana b'abantu. Kati kye tusanga abaana b'abantu Abatuusi n'Abayima be balina obusobozi buli kintu kyonna bwe tugenda mu byobufuzi be basalawo anaakulembera ekitundu kino ate bwe tugenda mu byobufuzi fa abayiru tetubeera na busobozi bw'okunoonya abakulembeze be twagala ate wabeerayo embundu ne ssente bwe bigaana n'okutta bakola ki batta bwe tugenda mu byobulamu tuyina rifaaro embalala ya western region naye ebizimbe ebipya ebirimu bya private they are owned privately byananyini bya bwananyini then tuyinamu n'amaduuka g'amalagala aga bwananyini nga siga private ate tuyinamu bine ebizimbe ebikade bye bazimba mu rujimu y'oboti kati ebyabanaku abiiru mwe bagenda ate n'osanga abalwadde nga beebaka wabweru bali ku oxygeni bali ne ku drip ate nga ebikozesa mu ddwaliro bakuggyako ssente kati okulaba nga CT scan bakuggyako emitwalo 335 buli kimu mu ddwaliro tukola ki tukisasula ate nga lya gavumenti ate mu masomero osanga essomero limu lina abaana nga 7 nga balina abasomesa nga 10 oba 7 mu private ate nga tebalina na classrooms aw'okutuula ate n'ekirala mu education wabeerayo scholarships eziva mu state naye zigenda mu families ezimu zino eza Tutsi n'ebayima ate economically mu byenfuna be balina ebyenfuna eby'amaanyi be balina zi factories ate tebasasula misoro tebasasula bills z'amasanyalaze tebasasula bills z'amazzi ate oluvannyuma ezo zonna bill baziteeka ku bana abayiru abalina obubizinesi obutono ate n'ekirala Mwankole region bano the Tutsi and Bayima be balina okusalawo mwana waani agenda ku mulimu guno mwana waani anaagenda mu magye anaagenda mu poliisi n'obwotuukayo ekyo kikugoberera ne bagamba ono omwana wa gundi tumuwe ekifo kino kati ffe tusigala nga abayiru tukolera the Tutsi and the Bayima ate bwe tuvaayo eggwanga litulaba kimu naye bo the Tutsi and Bayima beekwese wansi w'abayiru okulimba eggwanga mbu ffena tuli kimu balina abayiru be bakozesa ngeno nga bwe kiri the ministers the what nga bava mu Buganda region mu other regions ne waffe bwekityo bwe kiri naffe bajjayo ne bakujjayo ne bakukozesa naye nga toyina buyinza